Afternoon. I think I'm going to start this live stream with in relation to an article I read this morning when I woke up in regards to the Barcelona situation and Ronald Koeman. And it's on the BBC Sport website. It's a very lengthy, in-depth article about the situation that Barcelona find themselves in. They're basically bankrupt. They can't afford to sack Ronald Koeman, yet they can't afford to keep Ronald Koeman, if that makes sense. His contract is worth, if they were to terminate early, €6 million in early termination fee. Straight up. He signed to a 2-year deal. Obviously, key players like Suarez and Messi have moved on, and Suarez was sold for well, a bag of footballs, basically, would be the best way to describe how much they got for Suarez, in how much they spent for Suarez in just like-for-like transfer fee. So they sold him for €4 million to Atletico. They've lost Griezmann on deadline day again to Atletico, so a key league rival, who obviously won the league last year. They didn't. Messi's obviously gone to PSG for nothing, because obviously last year under Bartomeu, the former president, they tried to invoke a clause of like stupid hundreds of millions of euros to get him out of his contract. There was the breakdown in contract negotiations. He was threatening to leave on a free. Then he played last season. He finished his contract. There was debates about the clause in his contract. Koeman wanted him to stay. But long story short, Barcelona are basically over €1 billion or £1 billion, depending on what currency you use, $1.5 billion in debt. They have no money. What is also very, very interesting. Actually, no, I read an article. The topic is about an article I read. That's what I want to start on, and then we can go to other discussions about, other sporting topics, which we will. But I read an article on the BBC Sport website in regards to the Barcelona situation. And it goes into a lot of depth about the previous club president, the current club president, Ronald Koeman's contract. The fact that Ronald Koeman, in his position, is at loggerheads with the new club president. There's also the club president is saying that certain players have to play in the squads, be it Champions League, Copa del Rey, La Liga, and that Koeman can't select certain players. These players have to play, which I think is bizarre from a club president trying to make selection policy, which is ridiculous. Koeman is basically being forced to field basically the youth team with a few senior players because other players are injured, other players their registrations haven't cleared because of salary constraints and suspensions. The whole thing is a mess, basically. The article is on the BBC Sport website. It goes on for a fair bit. It's a good 10-15 minute read. It's not a quick, short article. It's a very long article written by a Spanish journalist who works for the BBC. It describes the current situation with the current club president, whose name, actually, I'm going to have to get up because I forget whose name it is, and Ronald Koeman, and the situation that the club find themselves in. And there's a reason why the European Super League idea was thought of. It's not because they want to make European football more competitive. It's because these clubs are basically racked with debt, especially the three that are still attached to this European Super League with Juventus. Ironically, Ronaldo's left Juventus, Barcelona. Or look, Messi's left Barcelona and Real Madrid. So the toxic battle ripping Barcelona apart. That is the title of the article. It's written by Guillem Balagué, William Balagué. Laporta is the current president. He obviously replaced Bartomeu, and there's issues in regards to there's links with Roberto Martinez to the job. Now, bearing in mind when they approached Ronald Koeman over the position, there was a get-out clause with the Dutch FA because he was the Dutch national manager, and Barcelona couldn't afford their clause. They couldn't afford the money to buy him out of his Holland contract. So Ronald Koeman spent the money himself in order to buy himself out of his contract, to then sign a contract with Barcelona for 2 years. Now, there's talk about extending him, not extending him, replacing him with Roberto Martinez, but no other manager wants the job. Now, Ronald Koeman isn't a bad manager. He's not the best manager out there. Let's be clear on that. He was the best available that was willing to take the job. Now, you could argue his time at Southampton, he did really well. His time in Dutch football, his time at Everton became, well, on this channel, a bit of a farce by the end, with how the end of the Koeman era several years ago ended up. He ends up with the Dutch job. He goes from Holland to Barcelona, and they're now linked to Roberto Martinez. In regards to how piss poor Barcelona are, they have got 2 games in hand in La Liga. They are unbeaten in La Liga, and that is crucial. That's fair comment. I think we can all agree. It's very early in the season, so only 4 or 5 games, 6 games in, you can't read a lot into that. In Europe, however, it's been shambolic, and yes, they have fielded the second youngest team in Champions League history or something like that the other night against Bayern. There were, I think, 8 players under the age of 21 or 23 or something. There's a lot of they can't. Well, yeah. There's clearly issues with they're just throwing young players in now, not just 1 or 2 like they did when Messi came along, and before Messi, you had Iniesta when they first came along with an experienced squad. They're throwing half the starting 11 on any given match day is under the age of 23. So now, instead of sending these players out on loan, which they normally would do, they're not ready, basically. And that's part of the issue with the Spanish league system being weak below La Liga level. But that's another debate on the strength of opposition that they play, and the strength of the league and the depth of the league, because the Barcelona B team play in the 2nd division, basically, because they can field 2 full squads of players. They have that play. They have a 2nd registered squad on the books, Barcelona B, which is shambolic that they can do that. But that's how Spanish football works. Certain clubs have a monopoly, but the situation is a mess. Basically, this article goes into the situation. If they want to sack Koeman, they've got to pay him out. But if they keep Koeman, they've got to pay him out the same amount of money that they can't afford over a longer period of time. So either way, it's Koeman gets a win-win. He either fills out his contract, which will be a first for most football clubs. Go away. I hate these random phone calls. Yeah, he either fulfills his contract for the whole length, or they sack him. But they're in a catch-22 because either way they've got to pay a value of around €6 million over a longer period of time, with the performance bonuses induced as well. So if they actually do win some silverware this season, they have to give him in performance bonuses, which actually will cost them more. Or they let him go and get Roberto Martinez, but then they've got to pay the Belgian FA for an early release clause there, because until the end of the Nations League, Martinez, he may extend his contract with the Belgian national side. So that's their target. They want Martinez. They want a Spaniard in charge of a Spanish club, which is fair enough. But he's not a Catalanist, Roberto Martinez. That's very interesting. He's from Asturias, I believe. But Barcelona have got themselves in a mess over decades of mismanagement that they've got away with when times were good, basically, is the best way to put it. And when you've got players like Xavi and Iniesta and Messi, for the most part, you have a license to print money. That's the revenue. That's not including the expenditure, which they could get away with while they could, print money. These players start retiring. Messi becomes the focus. They're spending stupid amounts of money on transfers. They sold. This is what I find interesting, how Barcelona have got themselves in this financial shit show that they're in. The Neymar transfer. In total, that transfer actually comes to near enough 400 million. So it's nearly €500 million, £500 million. I think $650 million, depending on what currency you're using on the exchange rate. And at the time to now, it's worth around 420 million. The euro to the pound is nearly similar, but it's nearly $500 million. Where has all that money gone? Because there's add-ons. So every time PSG win something, Barcelona get a a bonus on top of the fees, performance bonuses. That's how it works out. And this is where the transfer system is completely bollocks in football, completely bollocks. Whereas in other sports, sometimes if you've got a bad contract to move, there's normally the team you want to sell have to retain a percentage in order to get the deal across the line, especially in salary cap controlled or financial, well, in this case, financially fair play controls. There's sometimes a retention of salary. So Gareth Bale's loan deal, for example, in the Neymar transfer, PSG have got, well, money to print because they're owned by the Qatari government, and there's all sorts of backhanding deals there that are currently being investigated. And that's not a joke, that is actually on the record. There are investigations into PSG and their ownership. There's a reason why the UEFA took them to task over financial fair play, because there was some dodgy backhand dealings with their sponsors, basically, and the TV deal in France, which ironically then collapsed. Weird, that, isn't it? So there's some dodgy dealings going on there. But anyway, wherever the money comes from, they've got a bottomless pit. Barcelona don't. So that's one of the reasons why back in 2017, Barcelona were having money problems. We just didn't know about it. That's basically what the Neymar transfer is all about. They were happy to sell the player for the short-term injection plus the long-term bonuses of PSG constantly getting performance bonuses. So every time they win a trophy in France, or every time they make a Champions League final once, they get a performance bonus. So they actually make money on top of money. That was a sign that Barcelona were having money problems 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Barcelona were in financial difficulty if they were selling Neymar for that amount of money, because he's no player's worth that much money. No player. There's a reason why Suarez went for 4 million. There's no player is worth 100 times what Suarez is. No. Suarez is the proven player. Let's be honest here. Neymar's a prima donna. Suarez is a cannibal. Different thing. But that was clearly a sign that something was wrong. The overinflation of the transfer market. And Barcelona selling basically the new Messi. They were banking on Neymar replacing Messi as the key focal point of the team. Bring Suarez in. You've got Neymar there. Messi's getting older. Suarez, okay, a veteran player, but a proven goal scorer in the Premier League and in Holland. So a proven goal scorer in other leagues in Europe. Aggressive, fast pace, bangs in the goal. Messi and Suarez and Neymar are all gone. All gone. But the fact they sold Neymar was highly interesting at the time. Sell him PSG. And yeah, that was, looking back on it now, that's a clear sign that the club are in trouble financially. And this is before COVID. This is 2 years before, 2.5 years before the pandemic hits home. This is 2017. One of the first videos on the channel that actually had a fair number of views. And fast forward all this time, he's now extended because there's an extension bonus. Barcelona's meant to get some money off that. So the transfer payments are now paid to Barcelona, but it does raise the question about, well, that money's gone. It does raise the question why they're still allegedly 1.5 billion in debt when they got basically 500 million. Where has that money gone, and why are they three times more debt than what that one transfer is worth in total, with all add-ons and bonuses and signing bonuses and retention salary, whatever, all the other financial bits and pieces and sponsorship and all that crap. Barcelona has been mismanaged for a lot longer than we realise. And their squeaky clean public image, all those years, has been undone in the last 2. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I'm not a fan of Neymar and his antics, and I'm not a fan of how much he went for. But I think that's a clear sign that Barcelona were in financial stress 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago. Fast forward 2 years, a small club in Greater Manchester get promoted from League Two to League One. In Bury, they actually go bust. Again, this is pre-COVID. And I said at the time when all this was happening, with Bolton Wanderers having their own financial problems as well, and Wigan and a few other clubs facing administration, Derby County are now looking at getting administration, and the Wycombe owner is taking legal action because They should have gone to administration last season, which would have kept Wickham up and relegated Derby, and they're saying they've lost out on 40 million in revenue because of that. So there were signs before COVID that big or small clubs were in financial stress. There was a financial stress on the system because all transfers are linked, because all these player agents and transfer fees and the whole, club structure. So yeah, you fast forward the Neymar transfer. Fast forward 2 years, a club successful at their level were in financial difficulty. This is Bury, and people go, why are these things linked? Because football itself, as a sport, it doesn't matter what professional level you are at, be it Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, League One, any of the European top leagues, and any of the divisions in the various countries across Europe. It doesn't matter about the big five, big six, count Portugal in there. All the way down to the lower professional level, the warning signs were flashing in the couple of years before COVID that things were going wrong. I mean, you go back a decade, Rangers, Gretna, Scotland. Okay. The warning signs were there, and they have been since basically the financial crash. Yes, James Rodriguez, we knew about that, but obviously it's after the transfer window, so whether he can play before Christmas, I'll have to read into that. But in regards to the Barcelona situation and Bury and a whole host of other clubs, the warning signs were there long before COVID hit early in 2020 when league football in Europe shut down in March. Okay, and all the leagues were put on pause. Some leagues didn't restart and were called. Some leagues were abandoned. Some leagues did restart. The signs were there and had been for a good decade, 15 years. The signs were there that the system was more and more strain was being put upon the system as each season passed. I honestly believe that the debt Barcelona have now, this is a long-standing thing. This didn't happen overnight. This didn't happen in the last 2 years. This is a longer-standing issue where revenues were just and expenditure it was a fine line. It really was a fine line. And you could argue they were overpaying players, the salaries, some of the transfer fees, transfer policy, bonuses they've got to pay. Bear in mind, they've got plans to rebuild the Nou Camp, which is going to cost €1 billion or something. So they're planning on let's look at Valencia. Valencia's another club with the Mestalla. They haven't finished their new stadium. They've been trying to build it for 20 years. The club's basically gone bankrupt 4 times in that time. Valencia, a club that 20 years ago was at top of the Liga and contesting the Liga titles and winning Champions League, Rafa Benitez, all that, challenging the established order of the big four, the big five in Spain. Now, include Bilbao in that, and they've had to rebuild their stadium, and that's cost them a lot of money, and they're not as wealthy as they could be. You've got Barcelona, Real, Atletico, Levante. There's an established order of clubs. Some of these clubs have never been relegated from the league. Atletico has. Bilbao have never been relegated, right? But Valencia have had financial problems for 20 plus years. They have been dogged with financial issues for a long time. And yeah, you have to scratch your head and go, well, the system was clearly broken before. It's been exposed, and I think that's what COVID's done, is exposed the money bubble. And I do believe it started to burst. I did a video, I can't remember how long ago now, it must have been 3-4 years ago, it might have been in 2018. And I raised the point of 2019, when's the money bubble going to burst? I think it was on a live stream, a few live streams as well. And I've had the questions asked. I've done, crikey, I've been doing this now for 4 years, 4.5 years. And I've been doing live streams, obviously, since 2018. But I did raise the question all those years ago about the money bubble. And it's going to burst. And I gave it at the time 5-10 years. All it needed was 2.5. And a global crisis of unprecedented scale that was not expected, predicted but not expected. I wouldn't. Yeah, well, you could argue that. Yeah, some of their transfers have been a bit ridiculous. You could argue that with Barcelona, but it's not just Barcelona. I think there's a whole host of other clubs that are in serious financial peril. and you look at the debts over revenue of clubs standing alone, this is not what the owners are worth. So with Man City, the owners and with PSG, the owners are worth infinite, right? When the European Super League thing came about in the off season, just before the Euros, at the end of last season, beginning of the summer, a freedom of information request was put in because all the clubs have to, log their accounts actually with UEFA to make sure they're financially fair play compliant. And you could argue, yeah, Barcelona's had some shit signings with Dean, Gomez, and Turan and all that, but their youth system. Oh, Arthur and Panic and others. Barcelona, their academy produces talent. 95% of them don't play for Barcelona. They end up elsewhere. Right? They end up outside the Barcelona system very, very quickly. But if I can go back to my point. So when the European Super League, debacle in that 24, 48-hour period went from it's on to it's gone, the clubs involved, someone obviously managed to get hold of their financial details. And only one club, I think a journalist or a group of journalists were approaching multiple clubs. One club didn't disclose, and that was Liverpool. Okay. One club was in profit, and this is not including the owner's value. Okay, this is not including the owner's value. This is on club revenue and expenditure. Only one club was in profit. That was Chelsea, and that was like 12 million in profit. Pennies. It was just making money in grand scheme of things. All the others, apart from Liverpool, didn't disclose what they were making and losing. All the others were making losses anywhere between 40 million on the last year to Barcelona and Real Madrid with stupid losses. We're talking 400, 500, 600 million in the last 12 months. So where this debt of 1.5 billion has come from is 3 times the size of last year's debt, which says to me, yes, pre-COVID they were in financial trouble. If you want to discuss the disaster that has been Barcelona's transfer policy and some of their signings, Suarez was brilliant when they bought him, when they sold him. That's a win for Atletico because the next season he goes on and wins the title and gives them the 2 fingers and fair play to him. Not that I like the guy, but fair play to him. Messi, wanting to leave, citing the clause in his contract. So clearly Messi knew things were going wrong when Suarez was leaving. The writing was on the wall. Now he's reunited with Neymar at PSG, where the Neymar said, "Look, come over here. There's money here. You're going to get paid. You're guaranteed your salary. You're not going to have to take a wage cut." And yeah, we can argue how much they get paid. But if you or I were to go to work and we were told, "Oh yeah, the company it's just made a whole host of bad decisions. Can't afford to pay you this month your full salary. I've got bills to pay," which I do. Right now, these players have rather more expensive houses and tastes than we do, but they've got bills to pay. Doesn't matter if you're on 10 grand a week, 100 grand. I don't give a fuck. We can argue that they're overpaid, but they've got bills to pay. When you're being told we can't guarantee you to pay what we are legally obliged to pay you in your contract, unless we renegotiate a new contract with your union because pay restructuring, you're going to go to the competition. You're going to go where an employer is going to pay you in the same industry. Now we can say, yeah, they're overpaid. The transfers obscene, but that's how that industry works. What's happened? Messi's gone to PSG. Suarez has gone fine. Bye. And in the article on the BBC website, right? The article, apparently it was a 90-second conversation between Ronald Koeman at Barcelona. I think it was Diego Simeone at Atletico. It was like, yeah, cool, you can have him. Let the agents and the clubs work out the deal. But basically Koeman was more than happy to let Suarez go. He was like, look, you're not part of my plans. Whether Suarez and I wouldn't say Koeman's finito. He's got a very good buyout clause. If you read the article on the BBC Sport website, it's the second news story on the BBC Sport website homepage. Koeman's in a win-win. If they sack him, he gets a massive payout, and if he stays, he gets paid the same amount of money with performance bonuses over a longer period of time. He makes his money. Barcelona lose in either situation. They want Roberto Martinez. He may extend with Belgium. Because Koeman had to buy himself out of his contract with Holland on the premise of, I think, certain contractual obligations. If they sack him early, they owe the Dutch FA money. Barcelona have screwed themselves with how they've dealt with it. Plus, the fact that he's been told what players to select for certain games. The new president, Laporta, is telling Koeman these players have to play this game. So Koeman doesn't have full choice on selection of his matchday squad, be it Champions League, Copa del Rey, and La Liga. He's been now told by the club president, who has no idea how to select and coach a football club, by the way. No idea. Right? The club president, who was presiding over this shambles, who was on the board under the last club president, Bartomeu, who also presided over this shambles. So basically, he's just replaced one idiot with another. He's now telling the manager, you've got to choose these selected players. I want these players to play. You've come through their youth system, which is fair enough. Koeman hasn't got much choice in who he plays because there's been issues with players getting injured. There's been issues with not getting players registered because of all the salary mess, the Messi situation, Griezmann. Look at the players that are just going by. Griezmann, gone. Suarez, last year, gone. Messi, gone for a free. They were nothing for Messi. The fact that he threatened legal action the year prior over the contract. What we now know is the former club president was taking money out of the club to blackmail and harass ex-players, current players, ex-staff, current staff, other club members. Was basically nicking money from the club to run a smear campaign in the media and then to also harass players and non-playing staff using heavies. Yeah, basically hired thugs, gangsters. Tells you all you need to know about the situation at Barcelona. If you want to link it into the wider situation in clubland, and I use other leagues as an example, and yes, I have been looking into the NHL, and yeah, pre-season starts I think next week, later this week. So the season's weeks away. The first pre-season games and training camps have already basically started. Kaprizov is now signed with Minnesota. That was a real holdout. That could have been very messy, but that's a good sign for the Wild. That's important for the team. But yeah, I've been sort of following the NHL. The season's looming. There's still roster moves happening. I think 10 teams are over the salary cap. So the current situation with the salary cap is tense. A third of the league, pretty much, is over the salary cap right now, as things stand. So many things will happen between now and the start of the season. There could be some action on the phones. Seattle's got a load of cap space. Arizona got a lot of cap space. They may take some bad contracts off some teams, or just take contracts and pieces off other teams. There's going to be a fair bit of player movement, I honestly believe, before the season starts. We're still seeing the waiver wire. We're still seeing unrestricted and restricted free agents not signed yet. So if you're an NHL fan, Seattle have a lot of space. Arizona have a lot of space. I think there's a few other teams with a lot of cap space. There's, I think, 5 teams that could basically absorb the cap chaos of the 10 that are over. Then the rest of the league is sort of, well, we can't really do much. Some have got some cap space, a lot don't. So a third of the league is over. I think 2 teams got loads. There's about 5 teams that are sweet. They could assist, and the rest of the league is sort of not quite in cap hell, but not quite in cap heaven. They can't afford to do too much, but with there being cap space at the bottom end of the league, with teams like the Kraken who aren't expected to do anything this season, because Vegas have done what they've done. Yes, there is expectation when Seattle joined the league before the expansion draft, they're going to get a good team. The team isn't as good as Vegas' team out the gate. We don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they do in their first season. These players have got a point to prove. We will see. Honestly, we will see what happens with Seattle and how they play their first season. It's going to be interesting. They're in I think they're in the weakest division out of the 4. They might be an outside chance of a wildcard spot. They're going to be competitive. There's a fair few teams in that division that are not looking good this season to make the playoffs. So it all depends on how the Central does as well. If there's 4-4 from both divisions or 5-3, the Pacific is the weakest division, and they're in the weakest divisions, which gives them a chance to be competitive. They can make the playoffs. In regards to back to Barcelona, the situation at Barcelona is it's not great. Neither the situation at Real Madrid either, or Juventus. All three of them have got problems, and we'll have to see what plays out really. But as I say, the warning signs were there well before COVID, and it's not just the big clubs. The warning signs were there long before we got to this point, and the pandemic has sped up. I think that the collapsing of the money bubble. I think TV deals won't get, or media deals, I think now, won't get any bigger than they currently are. I think that's we've peaked with the amount of money in actual or real terms that I think we're going to get for value for media deals, be it domestic or overseas. The Juve to Ronaldo to Juve, well, when he went, I think it was like 90 million. Juventus is owned by basically the family, Agnelli family, who own Fiat, basically, and the associated companies were big shareholders in what is now a wider conglomerate, which includes Chrysler and Dodge and a whole host of other car companies and tractor companies and all sorts, like New Holland. That's a tractor firm, which is also owned. So the people who own Juve own basically Fiat and assorted companies. The people who work for them are Torino fans. So that's the division in Turin. Is a lot of the employees of the Fiat Group support the red side of the city, Torino. The old lady is the nickname of Juventus. The city is a red and white, black and white divide. So you've got the black and white and the red and white side of the city. Fiat workers in Turin threatened to go on strike over the amount of money they were paying Real Madrid for Ronaldo. Could you see as a failure? Last season they finished fifth. The Italian Serie A has become competitive again. The fact that Ronaldo has left Juventus and Messi has left Barcelona. Bear in mind, Ronaldo left Real Madrid before COVID, right? But the fact that these guys are leaving two of the clubs that are involved in this European Super League shit show, and Real Madrid have obviously Gareth Bale ended up at Tottenham on loan, and debate about him and all that, and they've replaced their manager. Ancelotti's the new manager. These clubs, Juventus aside, because the Fiat family, as I call them, the Agnellis, they've got a license to print money. They're one of the wealthiest families in the world. But Barcelona and Real Madrid are owned by their members, basically. The club members own the club. So the fans, basically, in a sense. If you look at if these clubs are standalone entities, they will be liquidated, basically. Barcelona and Real Madrid if they were owned by a private owner like Derby County, who were basically on the verge of administration and a 12 points deduction, they would be in a situation like Bury. They would basically, they're worse than Valencia, and Valencia are in trouble. They're in trouble. Long story short, they are in shit. There's not debate. And the fact that Florentino Perez is banging this drum saying this idea is not going away, and the contempt that he has for fans, And the fact the players were never on board, the players were like, no. And the fact that a club president, the reason why Barcelona signed up, it was not because of love of Real Madrid. No love lost for Real Madrid by Barcelona fans because of the regional differences in Spain and the political side of things in Spain between Catalans, Basques, and Castilians. It's because they're broke. They've run out of money. They can't print money anymore. They've calculated that Messi leaving the club is equivalent to losing around 140 million in revenue per season. And the problem is they made it the Messi show. The supporting cast weren't branded enough. They weren't the Messi brand. And this is, I think, partly to do with the media, video games, advertisers. The Ronaldo-Messi rivalry, right? This who's the GOAT. To be honest, at international level, they have flattered to deceive a fair bit. To be honest, Pele's better. But the way that they've been branded over many, many years, their brands are worth stupid amounts of money. These two guys, Ronaldo and Messi, are also criminals. Yes, they're tax evaders. They got done in Spanish court. They paid the little fine, they made the problem go away. Right? You're right, do that, we're going to prison. They fiddled their taxes. These aren't great wrong. Ronaldo's been accused of several serious sexual offences. Let's not forget that he's been accused of rape twice. So let's not forget these guys ain't saints. No matter how much their public image says they are, they really aren't. Okay, they're really not. And yet you can't talk bad about them. You can't. You can't talk ill of Messi and Ronaldo. It's their brand. And this is a problem that professional sports face. But yeah, Ronaldo, wherever he goes, look, it's a license to print money. Messi, it's a license to print money. Real Madrid, well, they got a whole host of superstars at Real Madrid. They've been they're always able to attract the next Ronaldo, the next Messi. Barcelona, however, the way they structured the setup of that club was it was catered to the GOAT, right? Whatever he says goes. He wanted to leave. They panicked. There was a clause in his contract. The club president said, no, that clause doesn't exist. There's a time expiration on that. And it got messy, excuse the pun, this time last year. I did a video on it. He ended up staying. Last season was a mess. He leaves. On the very he ends up at PSG, another plastic club. PSG is just a merger of two clubs that, guess what? We're bankrupt. Oh, Jesus. But they had this image, this brand image, and a lot of sports are guilty of this. You can't talk ill of them, but actually, to be fair, if Ronaldo's been accused of some quite serious offences twice, people go, the women are after the money, they want to pay out, they want a story. It's blackmail. Yeah, the first time he was accused, he was 19 years old and he wasn't a superstar. He just joined Man United and was, he's this young, talented Portuguese kid who's a bit of an arrogant, goppy-looking giraffe all those years ago. So for all the advertising he does and all that public image, there is a suggestion of impropriety. The fact he's been in front of the Spanish court and been found guilty of tax evasion, not avoidance, evasion, so he's actually broken the law. He's not a saint. So let's stop pretending he is. Same with Messi. Let's stop pretending. Some of the excuses they come out with, no, we left it to another company to do our details, our taxing. Technically, on your branding, you're self-employed. You failed to do a tax return. No. You've got these advisors. They play dumb. They pay the fine. Problem goes away. Under Spanish law. Spanish law is stupid. You're wealthy, you can get away with it. Well, Spanish company's fucked. But you can't talk ill of these people. Christ, if I had a bigger channel and a bigger audience, I'll get crucified for basically calling out Messi and Ronaldo what they are, tax evaders. And Ronaldo, you could argue, maybe not the biggest saint when it comes to respecting women. I'll get crucified. I'll get slaughtered. Can't do that. No, I can't. The facts are out there. They were found guilty in a Spanish court of law. But this is the problem. Barcelona were paying, and this is a wider problem with professional sport. Too much money has been thrown around for too long, and it's coming home to roost because you don't have a license to print money. And these clubs were saying, we don't need fans to turn up the games. We'll get the expensive corporate seats. We don't need the real fans. You do. That the last 2 years have proven you do need us in the stadiums buying tickets because you lose revenue. And empty stadiums look really, really bad on live TV when you're trying to sell the product to a wider audience. Man City, the empty had. So you got that. But it's an interesting article, and I could debate, the wider linkages and all that. And the signs were there that football as a sport was in not as good health before the pandemic as we thought it was. And the issues with Barcelona are the same as the issues with all the other clubs. Barcelona is playing out very publicly, and the way it's being played out, it's a PR nightmare for the club. It's now known that they are screwed financially. And if there were any other club, they're a smaller club, they're in administration, they're getting liquidated, they're getting thrown out of the league. So that's the situation. I mean, I could, the exact debt. Let's have a look at the exact debt that Barcelona are in. The exact debt. This is really interesting. I'll talk about James Rodriguez, and I'll do a video on that as well because we knew he was on the way out. The exact debt that Barcelona is in. I've got to find it now. 1.35 billion euros, 1.3 billion euros, basically, or 1.4 billion euros, round up or round down. It's around, it's nearly 1.5 billion euros in debt. That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that under the system they have and the club structures, they have got themselves in that kind of mess. And you could say, Lionel Messi, Suarez, Xavi, Iniesta, that David Villa there at one point. Probably go back to the Ronaldinho era when he was there 15 years ago. There has clearly been an issue at Barcelona for a long period of time that has been accelerated by the issues with COVID. Accelerated. Exposed. Their bad financial management, their mismanagement, their overspend, the poor judgment in decisions and transfers. Yes, you could definitely say transfer policy has been shambolic. Losing basically your front. Well, this time last year, Suarez has just left. So if we go back to 2020, this time last year the season had restarted, but your front three, Griezmann, Suarez, and Messi, all three of them have now left the club within 12 months. One on a free, one for very little, and one on transfer deadline day this season. Right? They're all gone. Griezmann was a star signing. Coutinho hasn't worked out. Coutinho's been a misadventure, and people going, "Why?" When I was criticising him, going, "I don't think it's going to work out for Coutinho. I think staying at Liverpool would be good for him." He goes to Barcelona. Liverpool do better without him. His time at Barcelona, disastrous. Barely worked. So it's yes, you could argue transfer policy's been a mess, but you could also argue they're overpaying the players they have. Some of their transfers this summer were desperate in Wijnaldum, and Aguero was promised he would be playing with Messi. Messi leaves, and Aguero stated in an interview, "As when I was at Atletico and then when I went to Man City, I would like to turn up training early, especially Man City, because I like to train up an hour and a half early, maybe do a bit of gym work, maybe talk to one of the coaches, maybe just have an early breakfast, maybe just have a little jog, turn up early and do a bit of pre-routine." the lights would be on. I could turn up, the tea lady would be there. You could say hello, do a bit of one-on-one work in the gym, maybe do a bit of physio work, do a jog, get on the bike, do some practice drills, some shooting, free hit, just take some shots on goal, whatever. Just do a bit of individual training. Barcelona, the training ground was locked. The lights were turned off. And he's like, that's the difference. He's gone to a club and I think he's realising, but Guardiola didn't want him. But he's gone to a club where they can't afford to keep the training ground open for extra hours. They can't afford to pay the lighting bill. Spanish football's in a state as well as since their highs. They're having to get players who aren't Spanish to play for them, to get players who repair everything. Spain is to accept their era club. Gone. There's definitely a lot of infighting within the Spanish Federation when it comes to the national side. At the last World Cup, we saw that. Luis Enrique, he's had some personal, obviously his daughter died of cancer, so he was in as club manager. Then he has to take a step back from being international manager, and now he's back in. But they underwhelmed at the Euros. Passed a lot of passing, apart from the game against Slovakia, wasn't sold on Spain at all. Wasn't sold on them. In regards to their club game, yeah, it isn't a mess. And I think it has been a mess for a very, very long time. And Barcelona's not the only club in Spain with money problems. Valencia is another one, who have been struggling for 2 decades now with money problems. There's clearly problems within the Spanish FA. Before COVID, and I'm going to say this is why I think Barcelona and Real Madrid and a few other Spanish clubs were in financial difficulty well before COVID, was when Barcelona wanted to take a game to the US in the regular season to make money. The Neymar taking these games over. Barcelona were in money problems before COVID. I think we can all agree on that. I think the signs were there. We just didn't. We just thought, oh, it's a money grab. But now we know why it was a money grab and why they backed this European Super League idea, which they haven't pulled out of yet officially. Although it's not going ahead with 3 clubs because that'd be double. But now that we're seeing that the reasons for the money grab, we understand why. It makes sense that under the previous club presidents, and for a sustained period of time, even when Messi was there, and they were still winning a lot of trophies and competing for trophies, there were massive financial problems. Even when the team was successful and bringing in all the silverware, there were problems at Barcelona. Look, Spain is an interesting one because at international level, apart from their bid at the top, 2008 to 2012, their international side couldn't get it together at big tournaments. They would implode, and there would be infighting between the various club factions of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico, Bilbao, Espanyol, Valencia, because it's a very regional country. There would be a bit of infighting. And if you didn't, and you could be a brilliantly talented Spanish player and not get selected for the Spanish side because you play for an unfashionable Spanish club. You have to play for one of the big 5, and that hampered the national side. You fast forward 2008 to 2012, that period, and yes, there was a reason why they dominated. The style of play being played, that tactical style, pass and move, and possession-based pass and move, win 1-0, was the way to play at that time. That other formations and tactics and styles of play couldn't adapt to. You could just exhaust your opposition, just starve them with the ball and strangle them to death. And it was based on watching paint dry. It wasn't entertaining football. It wasn't enjoyable to watch as a fan. It wasn't very open and entertaining. It was anti-football at its best. But hey, Spain won. Oh, they've won. It's amazing. No, it was actually, I think, the worst period of football I've ever seen. I'm being honest there. It was the worst period of club and international football quality I have seen, barring the 94 World Cup. That was a terrible 4-year cycle. Terrible period for football. Shit. And that's one of the reasons why I fell out of love with the game. And people still praise this tiki-taka. No, tiki-taka is bad for football. It's if 1 or 2 clubs or nations do it, it's fine. But then other teams try to emulate the Spanish style and copy, and it just cancels each other out. If you've got that pass, rather than being unique, it became, oh yeah, look, try and play without a strike. I don't like that. You need a focal point. For a period of time, yeah. If it's like a unique thing where it's just one or two clubs or one nation doing it, it makes sense because it's unique, it's different, it's outside the box. Then other nations and clubs started copying. They tried to do this blueprint. It didn't work with the style of football and the leagues that you know the the footballing culture of a nation. And God, that era of football was shit. People go, that's when Ronaldo and Messi were like the goats. It's like no, it it was painful to watch. It was very unenjoyable. It was very. And this is why I watch other sports. Is that period of football is why I switched off. It's why I actually went. No, I've had enough. I don't enjoy it. And then 2014 came along and Holland beat Spain 5-1. I fell in love with the game for a little bit. I fell in love with the game again for a little bit. I can't stand Tiki. There's no passion in Tiki Taka. Basically, it's a passionless. It may be very effective, and I completely understand why a coach would go that we want to win. We want to win at all costs, and that's fine. But when an entire league starts doing it, apart from Atletico Madrid under Simeone, when an entire league starts doing it, it's I wouldn't say Man City are tiki taka. I think they're a hybrid because to do that every week in the Premier League, your best players are going to end up with broken legs because the opposition will get frustrated. Um, and you can't do it in the FA Cup because when you play that lower league side on a heavy pitch, tiki taka doesn't work. You need a nice billiard table, smooth surface to do it. And when you're playing on a cold night against Accrington Stanley away in the third round in the middle of winter, and it's pissing down with sleet, not rain, sleet because you're in Lancashire, right? It's cold, wet. The opposition are going to, well, they're up for it. Um, they're not going to give a fuck that you play in the Premier League. And I use Accrington Stanley as an example because they're actually one of the first teams alphabetically in the Football League. But you understand what I mean? Tiki taka only works when you're playing on a billiard table smooth surface, like a snooker table surface. And so what we class as the World Cup style venues, you UEFA stand the Champions League and Europa League, which I don't like some of these pristine pitches. You've got to have a proper pitch. These hybrid turf pitches, which ironically the amount of injuries are actually going up because the pitches are too firm. Just putting it out there. The amount of knee and ankle injuries and muscular problems I've noticed, the better the pitches get for firmness and looking like literally the green cloth on a snooker table, the more injuries we're getting. Bizarre, that isn't it? I miss the days of a bit of a tired looking pitch with a bit of mud in it. Get a bit of mud in your shorts. Ironically, there were less injuries. But if you're taking tiki taki in the FA Cup, third or fourth round away, lower league side, bit of a choppy pitch, cold, midwinter's night. Let's say it's the Friday night game where it's a replay, which they've got rid of now, but the old nights of an old replay. You're playing on away lower league club in the wind, the rain, sleet, possibly a bit of snow. Tiki taki doesn't work, as Wigan proved several years ago when they beat Man City 1. And I wouldn't consider Man City tiki taka. I would say it's a hybrid because they actually do get crosses into the box to a point. They don't get as many crosses into the box as they should. And they've got some good wing backs who, over the period, have always had good wing backs. Even to the days of Kolarov when he was playing. They've always had that ability to get across the box. They don't do it as much, but they don't really have that. Edin Dzeko's gone now and Kolarov's gone. They don't really have that centre forward or attacking midfielder who's 6 foot plus. They've got La Liga TV. I mean, look, I remember they had some La Liga games on ITV, and they weren't. Not gonna lie, the technical ability of the players in the league, there is clearly a technical ability there. But yeah, league football it's not as great as all these fans are banging on about. Um, I'd much rather watch um, ice hockey or rugby league. Yeah, I'd much rather watch other sports. Um, I have I honestly can say I've never seen a bad ice hockey game. I've seen some bad performances by teams, but I would never say I've seen a bad game. Um, Rugby league, I've seen some bad games for a variety of reasons, in the sense that they weren't the best. But yeah, energy, commitment, the collision, the physicality. You can't afford to have that. Oh yeah, we'll put out some reserve team players and we'll do that. We won't put a full effort in. We're going to win because you get hurt. Um, so when, like in the FA Cup and the League Cup, the Premier League or the Championship side are playing that lower league opposition in the third or fourth round, they wheel out a lot of changes and they're not going at full intensity. If you do that in rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey, you get hurt. You cannot go in to a contact sport like that half-hearted. You get injured. You cannot. Um, if we're talking about Spain and the problems they're facing, Spain when it comes to sport, their power is shifting away from Spain, and that's Dorna in the MotoGP. That's football with UEFA. Uh, two of their biggest clubs have basically pissed off UEFA now, and that's not what you want to do, really. Um, and yeah, it's an interesting one with all of that. See, I wouldn't say they necessarily were tiki taka because when they started winning trophies under Mancini and Pellegrini, and then with Guardiola the first season, I think they finished eighth. They actually had some centre backs who liked belting the ball long. I think they're more tiki taka now than when they were with David Silva was there. But I think the problem is the reason why tiki taka worked in Barcelona is the players came through the system. At Man City, apart from Foden, can you name any of the other youth system players who are in the starting squad regularly? And I can't name you one. There probably is a couple flying around the extended squad, but they're all imported players who played on different systems at different clubs. So in that sense, it's not true tiki taka because you've got players coming in from other styles of play and not through the system all the way through. So it's interesting with their youth policy, and it is what it is. In regards to the fixtures for next season, because the World Cup, the Rugby League World Cup has been pushed back here, and they've had to do it in such a way because they got used. The Rugby League World Cup got used for football stadiums as well for some of their fixtures. So two World Cups, ironically, affect English football next season. So yeah, when the Rugby League World Cup takes place, basically the build up will be this time next year. So this time next year, we're building up to the Rugby League World Cup. Meant to be building up this year, but now it's next year. Takes place October, November. They're going to be using Football League Stadium. Not all. The Emirates is one. I think the Bolton Wanderers, Headingley, or Ellen Road. I think there's both stadiums in Leeds are being used. I think one of the Sheffield stadiums, I don't know if it's Bramall Lane or Hillsborough, but I know one of the Sheffield clubs has got to give up their stadium as well. Old Trafford's another one. So there's a fair few football stadiums being used for the Rugby League World Cup, and then you've got the Football World Cup. How that actually impacts the leagues over here? If the League Cup fixtures are starting 3 days after the World Cup ends, that's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And technically, the Football League fixture list hasn't been released yet for next season because of stadium availability as well, in regards to the Rugby League World Cup. Because hypothetically, the champion, it's weird. So the Championship starts a week before the Premier League and all that, but it's interesting. It's interesting because the fixture list for next season hasn't been released. The Rugby League World Cup is taking place a year later than scheduled and is using several Football League and Premier League stadiums. Then, I think within a week or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, we're in the World Cup in Qatar after the end of the Rugby League World Cup. So there's going to be a lot of sport on free-to-air TV this time next year. And then they're now saying that provisionally the League Cup has matches 3 days after the World Cup ends. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. From what I gather, there will be a suspension of the European leagues in order to facilitate the World Cup. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting how this all plays out in the next, 12 to 14 months. Really interesting. We've still got World Cup qualifiers to play, Nations League games to play. The Women's World Cup is next year as well, or Euros. I think it's Euros, and that's been delayed by a year as well. So there's a lot of international sport and tournaments that have been pushed back. Then you have the World Cup, which is taking place at a non-traditional time, which is causing television broadcast clashes, which is a big problem that well, this is what, well, the Rugby League World Cup makes things very, very interesting, being it pushed back a year with the World Cup, Football World Cup, taking place days after. Is what I'm saying is, if you look at the stadiums that have been listed for training purposes and matches in the Rugby League World Cup. Now, when I did that video a few years ago, that list has changed. Some stadiums have now been dropped from that list, and when COVID came along, they did another rejig of fixturing and how they were going to do it. But basically, there are Football League stadiums like Old Trafford, like the Emirates, that they are going to use for the Rugby League World Cup. And so that's on one thing to discuss. Then, obviously, you've got the Nations League, which I never liked to begin with. I know we're having the debate of countries getting to the World Cup and getting to the Euros who shouldn't be there, because they've got like Scotland, for example, only got to the Euros because of their Nations League performance, and as we saw, Scotland were pretty crap. Turkey promised much delivered. There were some nations who made it to the Euros who you're thinking shouldn't be here. The fact it's not on free-to-air TV doesn't help the idea get off the ground in this country. Now, I don't know what the TV rights are in other parts of Europe in regards to Nations League and accessibility to the format, but in this country, the rights were sold to Sky. And when you're giving that much power to pay-per-view television, subscription television, as we have seen, it's actually more damaging for sport than people realise. There's a reason why cricket is on its knees. There's a reason why British ice hockey, even before COVID, was having problems. It has crap TV. Rugby league basically had it, thinking about shrinking their league, consolidating. Things are not well with basically putting sport behind a paywall. I would say that in regards to how things are going. I think there's definitely um, too much um, football on, in my opinion. We're talking about fixture congestion. We're talking about player welfare, and it's not just football; it's a whole host of sports. And we always have this discussion about player welfare, and rugby unions had this debate, limiting, capping the number of matches players can play in a calendar year. Rugby league, the player welfare is being raised in regards to high contact and other injuries, and the debate's been there. Other sport, ice hockey, American football, the player welfare side of things has been raised a lot in regards to um, players retiring early, mental health aspects, concussion being a big one, but then just general, you know, workload. We've seen several incidents now of rugby players, football players, cricketers, cricketers as well. Some of these players dying young. We had an ex-Widnes player who died at the age of 23. We had a youth, I think it was a youth rugby league player. I believe it was a rugby league player. It might have been a rugby union player, but a youth rugby player who was about 17 years old had a heart attack and died about a month ago. Um, and yeah, the so player welfare. I'm not. I was of more of the opinion just get rid of the pointless friendlies and have qualifying tournaments. In when you would have the international tournaments in the summer, which is good practice, I believe, for uh, all nations when it comes through to the main tournament, especially group stages and squad rotation. Interesting. A cricket question. The New Zealand teams, and this is from the government advice, so the New Zealand government, because there was actually a terror incident in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago, a minor terrorism incident involving an extremist who attacked, I think, some women in a department store in Auckland, I believe, killed a few people. So there was actually a minor terrorism incident, not on the same one as Christchurch. Put that out there, but there was a terrorism incident in New Zealand not long before this announcement, and it was extremist related. The women's and men's teams received advice from the Kiwis, the government, of Jacinda Ardern, that the smiling face of socialism with the big teeth, the horse face, the champagne socialist, as I call her. But the New Zealand government received credible intelligence, and I have no reason to doubt the New Zealand government, because actually they're one of the few governments that you would actually trust in a crisis to do the right thing. They informed the touring party, the players, we have a security threat against your safety. Like, it's come up on the intelligence wires that this is a thing, and this is what's been reported. Now, there's probably more to this than that. On the basis of that, the England, the England ECB, who were also in contact with the Kiwis, because they're both touring nations, and there was also some one dayers, and of course the T20 World Cup and players talk. The ECB, partly because New Zealand's a Commonwealth nation as well, and we share intelligence, the ECB decided to pull out the England touring setup. And there were concerns about security in regards to Pakistan after, I believe it was Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan tour bus that got shot up I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there's been issues with security concerns regarding Pakistan and Test cricket for a while. So basically, Pakistan have been forced to play their home games in Dubai until very, very recently. And this is in regards to what happened to the Sri Lankan team about a decade ago. It's only in the last couple of years that they've been able to host matches. Now, yeah, the New Zealanders received intelligence. The New Zealand government informed the cricketing authorities, couldn't guarantee their safety. They didn't tell them to pull out. They said, we can't guarantee your safety. There's a credible threat to your safety as a group. They then decided, the New Zealand Cricket Board decided to withdraw. The England Wales Cricket Board, the ECB, also decided to follow suit. The Pakistan Cricket Board, the PCB, oh, this is brilliant now, because my uncle's band's called the PCBs as well. My uncle's got a band and they've got the same name. It's ridiculous. But regards to that, the Pakistan Cricket Board have now complained, saying it's a conspiracy. This was this is blown out of proportion. Come to Pakistan. But in reality, actually, I agree with New Zealand and England pulling out of the tour series in Pakistan. If there is a credible threat to the safety of the players and the support staff, and of course, depending on COVID regulations, the fans, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to target the players' hotels, they're going to target a stadium, and innocent civilians will get hurt. It's what you class as a soft target, but a major target. Then yes, I'm in favour of England and New Zealand pulling out. The only way to actually force some of these countries to improve their security and actually, improve the situation is to refuse to play them until they can actually prove. Oh, look. I mean, people have the debate about women in sport and all that. Oh, it's not the same as the men. Stop comparing it. But yes, the women cricketers as well. The female, the black caps. I think they're called the Black Ferns. I can't remember. Yeah, both the New Zealand women and England women were also, I think, due to play games there at some point in the next 12 months. I know the New Zealand women were also on the tour with the men. Yeah, I completely agree with the cricketing authorities pulling out. The only way, especially for Pakistan, to sort themselves out, and is the well, yeah, sport can be used as a soft power diplomatically, but yeah, no, in all honesty, um, yeah, no, I completely agree with the cricketing authorities in both England and New Zealand for pulling out players and not going. Ironically, cricket may not be the most physical game to play, but it is very mentally draining, especially if you're playing a 5-day test match and a 3 to 5 match series. That actually does take a lot out of you mentally. And there have been concerns about some of the mental health of players, not just England players, but across the board. And when it comes to Test cricket in Pakistan, there's been uncertainty about security arrangements there for the best part of a decade. As I say, this is not a new problem that they are facing. There's a reason why they've been forced to play games in Dubai for the last decade, pretty much. I think the West Indies were one of the teams to, put the toe in the water and play a Test series over in Pakistan a couple of years ago. Before COVID, they decided we'll give it a go. Passed off without incident. But yes, things politically in the region have changed since the West Indies played a Test series over there before COVID. The situation in Afghanistan, which is a bordering country, is getting dangerous. There are legitimate security concerns. Bangladesh had some problems as well. not that long ago, where there were security concerns in Dhaka in Bangladesh. I think about 5 years ago there was a threat, a terrorism threat. But you get terrorism anyway. Euro '96, Manchester City Centre. The IRA rearranged Manchester City Centre during Euro '96. The tournament went ahead. So, what can I say? There's the Olympics in Atlanta, same year, the Summer Olympics. There was a couple of bombings by a right wing extremist. France, Euro 2016, there were several terrorism attacks in France, roughly at the time. In the build up to the Sochi Olympics, there was a bomb at a train station 6 months before the Winter Olympics in Sochi. So even in what we class as safer countries, there has been in the build up to or during a sporting event incidents. Eoin Morgan, although I'm not a fan of Eoin Morgan personally, he should really be playing for Ireland, and I think, yeah, he sold his. I think Ireland would have been a test side a lot sooner if Eoin Morgan had decided to keep playing for them, but he chose to take the ECB centralised contract, which was worth a lot of money. So you can tell where Eoin Morgan's loyalties lies in his wallet. But yeah, like the security concerns with Pakistan, though, are a lot more serious than other countries because of Afghanistan, I think, is a big thing in this. But there's a lot of issues with Pakistan with corruption, and it's not just. There's a lot of issues with Pakistan. A lot of problems, and yeah, security is a major issue. The Australian side of things, look, we don't even know if the Ashes is going to take place yet. They've had to move both the AFL and NRL grand finals. I don't feel bad for the players, to be honest. I don't. I, in all honesty, I take a very pragmatic approach to this situation, and if you have to study basically the situation politically in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iran and all that, and that geopolitics. There's issues in Kashmir and the Punjab between India, Pakistan, and China. That's three nuclear powers who could basically fire missiles at each other. There's political violence in Pakistan. You know, there's a whole host of things. I mean, the Grand National, I think it was in '97, the bomb hoax at Aintree. Like, yeah, the political violence, political terrorism, and then fundamentalist, which is terrorism, is sort of political. But terrorism is terrorism. We've seen issues at a multitude of sporting events. And I use Euro '96 and the Atlanta '96 Olympics as two examples where bombs actually went off during those events. And those events weren't cancelled and they carried on. The situation is they weren't actually, well, the Atlanta Olympic Games, there was a bomb left nearby in the city and it went off and it killed some people and it was a thing. But the athletes themselves and the fans inside the stadiums weren't being targeted. That's basically what this credible threat was all about, was what happened with the Sri Lanka team. And I think the ICC would have to be going, right, okay, terrorism threat, Pakistan. Does Pakistan lose the right to host Test cricket again for a period of time? With what happened with the Sri Lanka team a few years back, I think that's going to be fresh in the mind of every other Test nation that is scheduled to play Pakistan in the next couple of years, because it's all when they do the test scheduling, they're doing it 3, 4 years ahead. Provisionally, there's a provisional list of right. You're going to be playing home and away against this, these countries or whatever. They cycle this in 3, 4 years ahead, provisionally, and every other test nation will be looking at this going, do we want to play and be willing to play away in Pakistan? Or do we go to Dubai, where we know the security is better, we know the conditions are similar, so it's going to be the same experience of playing under similar conditions, you know, a hot, dry wicket. You're going to get swing, you're going to get bounce. It's going to be different to whatever. I look the East. Look, this Pakistan risks, and it's all to do with security, and there's lots of issues internally in Pakistan that's more complicated than just it's, you know, the issues with the Afghan border and the Punjab and the Kashmir. There's a lot of political terrorism. Political assassinations are quite common. Um, there is a multitude of terrorist groups that use Pakistan because of the lawlessness and corruption. There's an almost semi-state civil war in the north of Islamabad, in the tribal regions, as they call it, where um, they're basically at war with the Pakistan government and at war with each other. There's a semi-state of guerrilla civil war in the north. Um, there's lots of kidnappings take place. Yeah, there is political violence. There's been multitude of military dictatorships where the military has just seized power and political dissent is not tolerated. So there's political resistance to the military. Um, I would just say to stop going to Pakistan and then put Pakistan in the test wilderness until they sort it out. And because cricket, alongside field hockey, are the two major sports, if you can't compete, that's not in in your favourite sport, pressure will be put upon the Pakistan government to sort it out a little bit because it's a bad PR move. It really is. And this is the problem. Whereas India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have had their issues with terrorism and issues with separatists and violence, they're still able to host test series. Now, Sri Lanka had the Tamil Tigers, was in a state of civil war for the best part of 30 years, still able to host test matches. India's got the Kashmir, Punjab situation alongside Pakistan and China, still able to host test matches, even after the Mumbai terrorism attack a decade ago. Bangladesh, they've had some issues with on the border with Burma, with all these Rohingya people coming over. There's been a bit of terrorism in Bangladesh as well. There's been a military dictatorship in Bangladesh, able to host test matches. Um, so the other subcontinental nations have had their own issues with terrorism and not just terrorism, but civil war in Sri Lanka for most of my life. Only recently, as the civil war in Sri Lanka ended, that was going from the 80s until I think 4 or so years ago. Hundreds of thousands of people displaced and killed, like a lot of people, car bombs and assassination, still able to host test series. So I don't. There are more issues in Pakistan than I mean. I've simplified it basically, but Pakistan is not a safe country. It, there is always Foreign Office advice for travellers. Um, they give Foreign Office advice to India and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And they're beautiful countries, by the way. I mean, the people are friendly. I've got friends from Sri Lanka, I've got friends from India, friends from Bangladesh. The people are friendly, trust me. But there are certain political and religious groups who may like to leave a pipe bomb under your car or assassinate you or kidnap you. Um, you get travel advice for certain countries. So when we had the SARS virus 20 years ago, Singapore and Hong Kong, there was travel advice saying that there's this virus similar to COVID. It's the virus before it's a related virus. Here's travel advice. Be aware of these symptoms. If you have these symptoms, go to the hospital. When my cousin went to South America, he had to get a certain type of travel insurance that covered him for kidnapping up to a certain ransom point. Now he's a dual national, so he decided to travel with his Italian passport, so he had no problems. But you get travel advice. There was travel advice to going to the Russia World Cup in regards to certain don't go out after a certain time, stay at certain areas of cities, don't drink the water, drink bottled water. If you go to Turkey, the travel advice is that in the east of the country there is a low level insurgency with the Kurds, and you will be going through military checkpoints near Lake Van. So in the far east of Turkey, it's a bit like what Northern Ireland was like in the Troubles, or the Basque Country during ETA's campaign, or low level insurgency, car bombs, assassinations. Not pleasant. If you're going to places like Jordan, they will say due to regional violence, like Syria, there is a chance of terrorism. Same with Egypt. My dad used to go to Egypt twice a year, once at Easter, once in the autumn for his birthday with his partner. They used to go twice a year. 2 weeks at Easter, 2 weeks in the autumn. So this time of year, he would do his 2 weeks in the autumn. That'd be his annual holiday, his 28 days. They regularly had travel advice saying that there is a high risk of terrorism in Egypt. Be aware, armed. You be vigilant. Blah 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 blah. You should be safe, but Sharm el Sheikh and the Red Sea resorts have armed guards at the hotels. Because this whole thing with Pakistan is not a new thing. Does it look bad for the ICC? Well, they sanctioned Pakistan to host test matches again. The fact that two touring nations have pulled out 24 hours within 24 hours of each other doesn't look good. You've got the T20 World Cup. Yeah, the ICC's egg on its face. So if you've got these security concerns, then yes, it's highly likely that the T20 World Cup will be affected. Let's not kid ourselves. But the fact I've got onto a political debate, I should really have that on the other channel. But to understand the situation in Pakistan, you have to understand that when you have a credible terror threat, you have to take it seriously. You have to remember when the Christchurch terrorism attack happened. I can't remember if it was the Bangladesh, or I think it was the Bangladesh team were playing a test series against New Zealand, and they were literally in the area. They were in the next mosque down, like doing a community day where they were going out, and they were going out, and they were going, and the coaching staff, because some of the coaching staff aren't Muslim. I think some of the coaching staff are English and Australian. Were like, "Yep, have a community day," because there's a big Bangladeshi community in that part of Christchurch. And New Zealand, ironically, is a cricket mad country. They were literally round the corner from where this guy was killing innocent people. And I had a friend in Christchurch at the time. A friend of mine was actually in Christchurch at the time in New Zealand. And straight away when I saw the news, yes, they're like 8, 9, 10 hours ahead. I messaged my friend. And I was like, I hope you're okay. I've seen what's happened. Just let me know you're safe. And within 10 minutes, she was like, I've heard loads of bangs. I'm fine. What's going on? I said, do you want to check the news? Do you want to check the news? She didn't actually realise what was going on until she actually checked it. I said, you want to check the news? Don't go out of your hotel or hostel. Wherever you are, stay inside. Lock the doors. And but Bangladesh went to New Zealand, and that series went ahead because there was no intelligence that lone gunman was going to go on a killing spree. But yeah, if the T20 World Cup, that could definitely get affected, and it has to be considered that yes, that could definitely be impacted, no doubt, and it is something that has to be considered absolutely. Well, I think every major sporting event they have to do a threat assessment. We saw what happened with the Manchester Arena bombing. That could have happened at any sporting event or any major event. It happened in Manchester. It could have happened at the O2 in London, the old Millennium Dome. It could have happened at Old Trafford. It could have happened anywhere. Um, the thing is, though, Pakistan is known for terrorism. It is known for political instability. It's known for political violence. It's known for the fact that in certain areas of Pakistan there is a low level insurgency in the north. There's also issues with the border with India and China in Kashmir and Punjab. That is a flashpoint, a three-way flashpoint. That's three nuclear states, two of whom are very stable, and one of them not so much. And so, yeah, there is definitely political and religious violence in Pakistan. It's not a safe country. If you were to go to me, do you want to go anywhere in the world? You got a list of 5 countries. You have to visit 3 of them, and Pakistan was one of those 5 countries. It would not be on my list of 3 that I have to compulsory visit. I'll tell you that. I'd much rather go to Medellin in Colombia and go to Pablo Escobar's house than go to Pakistan. I'm more likely to live and probably end up with some money as well. Yeah, there's also the security services, but when the New Zealand security services basically informed the cricket team, the cricket. I think the team manager basically he's not actually. Look, you're planning on going. We've got a credible threat against your individual group. I think the threat was a credible threat against the individuals. It's not like there's going to be a terrorist attack in Pakistan. They're targeting you guys. You guys are going to be targeted. You can't look. We can't even trust the Pakistanis to not bowl 3 no balls and over and fix and over. Okay, we can't even trust the Test cricket team to not try and fix matches. How the fuck are we supposed to trust the Pakistani government when they can't even govern their own country? It's one of the most corrupt governments we'll find. Corruption runs from local level all the way to the top. The military is the power in Pakistan. There is a likelihood of a military coup at any minute on a day-to-day basis. This is a nuclear power that's unstable, with the majority of its guns pointed at India, predominantly in the Punjab and the Kashmir, which is a contested territory that has been contested for a long time. You've got India and China also pointing guns at each other in another part of the Punjab and the Kashmir. But it's Pakistan. I think other countries have had, look, it's not just that. We've seen issues. The amount of death threats like individual players face on a daily basis. I was watching. What was I watching the other day? I was earlier today. I was watching a rugby league podcast on YouTube. It's called Bloke in a Bar. It's a podcast by an ex-player, and he interviews current and ex-players and commentators and club officials and people within the game. And there was one. Who was he interviewing? Oh, this is going to annoy me now. He was interviewing someone, and it was to do with social media. Ryan Pappenhausen, that's who he's interviewing, Melbourne Storm player, and he was discussing death threats, threats on social media, and not just you're a piece of shit, you whatever. It's I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your family. Can you remember before social media, before that was a thing? Players. I mean, I've read articles and I've watched interviews and all that. And I used to watch a program called Question Time when I was a student because I was a politics student, and my tutor said just watch this every Thursday night, and then our next lesson we've got to discuss. This is like sort of like unofficial homework. Watch it, write down the topics that were on the program and your thoughts on the questions that are asked and what you would do if you were in Parliament, for example, as a politician. Well, okay, that's a good idea. Or if you're writing policy for a political party, I said, okay. It's all about the intelligence. So the intelligence services will have people on the inside. So when you say sending a threat, the amount of crap I get. This is how a terror assessment works. I've got friends who work in the security industry. This is how you do a threat assessment. and it's the same with any venue. If your security company goes, "Look, we've got a threat coming in that there's going to be, an individual," and then you deal with the police as well. We believe your premises may be under threat of gang violence or drug deal. An individual is going to be in your premises unit, right? Right. Let me just get back to how a threat assessment actually works. I've got relatives and friends in the police as well. So you receive intelligence. There are various sources of intelligence. I should really discuss this on the other channel. I don't know why I'm discussing it on on the sports channel, but it's related to the sports question. So you get a threat. Now, 95% of the time, you've got keyboard warriors or someone mouthing off in a pub or a bar or word of mouth, I'm going to do something, or I'm going to send a death threat or hate mail. It's basically what it is. Then there's that 5% that are more viable. And this is where you've got all these listening posts, you've got bugs, you've got undercover investigations, you've got assets, basically assets on the ground. That's insiders. That's people with listening devices. They're checking the chatter because mobile phones. These jabs, they're not 5G us in the arm. The 5G's in the phone. They're picking up, credible intelligence. There's various ways of doing that, and you can watch any documentary, any Bond film. Okay, it's a bit dramatization, but A Clear and Present Danger, Harrison Ford, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, written by John le Carre. He was a brilliant author. I've actually met him. It's not his real name. With Gary Oldman in the new one, also Alec Guinness in the original one. Intelligence gathering is done by assets on the ground and also wiretaps. And this is how they caught Hansi Cronje in the match fixing. They had a wiretap in a hotel. So there are warrants out there for surveillance. All this intelligence has been gathered. They've got enough information to tell the touring party, you guys are going to be a target. They're going to basically try and kill you. Basically, not saying it in the media, but basically, if they go, there's a credible threat, like they're going to try and kidnap or kill you. You're a high value target. It will embarrass the Pakistani government if you die, probably more so than if you cancel. If you cancel, it just embarrasses the Pakistan cricket board. If you die or get kidnapped, it's more embarrassing for the Pakistani military and the government who are trying to sell Pakistan as a safe place to go. Don't go, don't die. Basically, stay at home. So that's how intelligence gathering works. There's been enough evidence gathered that a terrorist cell, or maybe gangsters, because it could be a kidnap plot, we just don't know, are threatening. They've said, look, we're going to, words out there, you're a target. A simplified way of basically saying this: have got the intelligence to know that you're at risk. The same thing applies over here. Now, the terror threat is a high terror threat on our grading system. And I read an article online about how many terror threats have been. It was very short notice, but I think they were preparing to do the pre-tour preparations, where they go over, they start training, getting used to the conditions. You don't just fly over and play the next day. You've got to get used to the conditions, have some training sessions, set a base camp. You go over, I think, a few, because you've got COVID protocols. They would have to quarantine, and then they have to train. So they were due to leave. Obviously, yeah. We don't know how long they've been gathering this intelligence for, because, as I say, these test series are planned months, if not years in advance, of the fixtures, where you're going to play, and all that. Now, it is embarrassing. Well, then they've obviously were in Pakistan, but you try being a white man in Pakistan, you stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah, you will stick out like a sore thumb. I know obviously something's obviously been picked up on the chatter where when they initially went, the threat level was lower. But when I think obviously something's been picked up that they were the specific target. Not like there's going to be terrorism. We know that's a risk you're going to take. I think what has actually happened here, if I can use my experience of my dad being an ex-bomb disposal expert, and working with special forces, and I've got friends in the military and I've got friends in the police. So from everything I've gathered from, you know, my personal life with my friends and family, um, I would say that in that regard, the situation has changed from a general threat of terrorism to, you know, something being picked up to say, yeah, we're gonna target New Zealand testing. Now, it's obviously got to be a very credible threat with a high likelihood of action happening, not just your average hate mail. Because what we've seen, um, basically, it's a viable threat, and that means there's a more than a certain percentage chance of something happening, and especially if it's a prescribed group. Because when I say prescribed group, that's basically if you are a member of this particular organisation, you risk imprisonment because it's declared an illegal organisation by a state or multiple states. So I was reading up. There was an article I was reading on Wikipedia about the Troubles. I just thought, this has impacted my life because of my dad being in the army. My granddad being an ex-member of Parliament, who actually spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland with his parliamentary job. Not really long. And a list of I've got onto the article of prescribed groups. If a known terrorist prescribed organisation, when I say prescribed, it means if you're a member of this organisation, you are going to be arrested, basically. Uh, um, your class as an enemy of the state. Nice way of putting it. If a known terrorist organisation or organised criminal organisation that may be involved in kidnapping, because that's a big thing that happens in Mexico and South America, and that has happened to football players and their families, where you have a bad game, your mum gets kidnapped. Oh, yeah, that's happened in Brazil a fair bit. Then, yeah, if one of these terror groups or organised criminal groups on the wiretaps or something says we're going to target, kidnap, or assassinate, kill. Yeah, it's happened in Colombia. There was one recently in Brazil where a guy was playing, I think, for Corinthians or Santos, and he had had a couple of bad games, so they kidnapped his mum for like 40 million Brazilian reals. They kidnapped his mum, and he paid the money to get his mum back. Like, you play well, he was not playing well. His form was a bit off, and so some criminals who had bet a lot of money and lost a lot of money on bets kidnapped his mum, basically, to make a point, like play better or. Yeah, look, I think the Pakistan Cricket Board, it's the Pakistan National Security, the police and the army and intelligence services didn't pick it up, whereas the New Zealand intelligence service picked something up, and obviously the Foreign Office here and in New Zealand will give travel advice, and they'll say that there is a risk of terrorism in Pakistan. There's a high risk. Be vigilant. Don't not go. So obviously the New Zealand test team are there. They're preparing, and obviously a specific threat is being made against the team. And what we saw with the Sri Lanka situation was, I believe, in that situation where they were attacked, there was actually a threat made against the team. And they said, we have all the faith in the security we have to get from the hotel to the ground, play the test match, play the day's play, get back to the hotel, and we have every faith in the security procedures in place. And that was proven to be misplaced. So I do believe, with Pakistan, there is a trust issue with security. Other countries obviously have much better security measures in place. We will now. we terrorism happens wherever. Like political violence happens wherever. Organized crime, where kidnap. Some countries, street violence as well. It happens. You can't avoid that. Some countries have a much lower risk than others, and some areas and countries have lower risk. It happens. But I think with Pakistan itself, considering that an ICC member was attacked not that long ago, the security was deemed not to be good enough. Clearly, the fact that two test nations have withdrawn over security concerns, yeah, I think they are valid. We can start as a conspiracy against the Pakistan Cricket Board, or it's any threat. There has to be a way you work out the threat assessment. It's a little bit more complicated than how I've described it. You have to work out, is this some knob jockey on a laptop just spewing hate, or this is an actual organised criminal or terrorist group actively seeking to commit an atrocity or a kidnap or do something. This is clearly the latter. The intelligence services know what they're doing. They've had some foul ups, but I do honestly believe, especially with the New Zealand intelligence service, they've got apart from one or two incidents, they've got a pretty decent track record in identifying threats overseas for their nationals, and they have to protect New Zealand nationals overseas. And the fact that the New Zealand, both men and women's teams, were named, say, look, we're going to target these guys at some point. How far along this, until more details come out, so they've obviously got a concern, like we can't guarantee your safety, like the Pakistan government now, you're in their hands, but we believe you're at risk. They've, with the evidence put before them, have gone, the risk is too high. The ECB have gone, we agree with the risk being too high. We are also going to withdraw. That does raise questions about the T20 World Cup. That does raise questions about the future of touring teams in Pakistan. Other countries, Sri Lanka, as I say, India, here, even in the Caribbean, there's issues where, not terrorism necessarily, but organised crime, where if you're in the wrong neighbourhood, it doesn't matter if you're a famous cricketer or not, you're getting shot. There are some parts of the Caribbean you don't want to go after night, after dark, outside your tourist resort. If you go down the wrong turning, you're in trouble. And you've also got political instability in Venezuela, the drug trade. Central America is a bit dangerous. So you do get travel advice when you go to the Caribbean. So if they're playing a game in Guyana, which is actually technically in South America, Venezuela's just across the border, and there is political violence and instability, and bandits are running around smuggling things in and out of Venezuela. People out, drugs out, guns in. Same on the Colombian side of it. So yeah, and again, if you go down the wrong alleyway, you're ending up in a shanty town, and you will probably get shot and kidnapped. It has happened. It's the same in any major city in the US. You could be at a sporting event as a sports star. You could you'd be going back to the hotel, take a wrong turn in the rental car. You end up in the wrong neighborhood. Oh dear, you are in trouble, and it has happened. So I do think there will be a statement from the ICC. There has to be. The fact that two nations have pulled out of tours of Pakistan at short notice, citing, I'm going to say, terror threat, I think, in this case, and concerns over security in a country that's had issues with, a touring team getting shot at and members of that touring party dying in a terrorist-related incident. Yes, I would think But it's similar to I think it was in the Africa Cup of Nations when Togo, their team bus was shot up in Angola. Um, it does happen. Um, and in some countries, it's not terrorists; it's just bandits. It's just organised criminals and criminal gangs that kidnap and rob people. It happens in South Africa regularly. Like on the motorway, you'll be just kidnapped for your money, um, robbed at gunpoint. Um, look, I think obviously the situation has developed very, very rapidly, very quickly. Whether it's obviously more complicated than what we are told as members of the public, but as a fan who reads a lot of books, and I like my spy my spy films and my true story spy things. So if you watch stuff like The Sum of All Fears and Clear and Present Danger with Jack Ryan as the character, CIA operative. Um, yeah, there's that's a good film series. You've got about 4 or 5 films in that film series, and very interesting. Honestly, I would suggest you watch the Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy films. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant films. Um, Harrison Ford in it, but in no, because then it makes it obvious that a big event's happening. I think you just have to go with the security services. I honestly believe yes, there is a wider issue within Pakistan. I think Pak- it's a more complicated issue than than just an isolated terror threat. I do honestly believe this was a targeted terror threat against the New Zealand team, both men's and women's teams. Um, if it was just a terror threat, they picked up, or there was going to be there's going to be a car bombing in Karachi, you know, sometime in October. That's different, but this is a targeted threat, I do believe. And if you think seriously, if you think about it, it doesn't take long to plan an action. I mean, in theory, I could plan to rob my neighbours upstairs with drug dealers like that. I really could. I know exactly where they stash their. I could. There are 2 of my neighbours upstairs, so that flat and that flat, they deal drugs. I live in a block of flats. It so happens that 2 of the neighbouring flats, I think 3 of them are drug dealers. In 2 of the flats, I know where they keep their drugs. It wouldn't take me long to plan, and I'm not joking. And they're not very subtle about what they do. They're lovely people. They just happen to make a lot of money out of narcotics. But if I was to plan to rob them, it wouldn't take me long. Um, uh, but that's for me to plan. It wouldn't take me long. In order for something like this to occur, it wouldn't. There's enough militant groups running around Pakistan and well armed criminal gangs around Pakistan. It's not hard to go right. We'll just attack them on the road from this hotel to the test ground. Just fire off some rounds. It won't take that much planning. The Sri Lanka Test series in the last decade when they were attacked didn't take that much planning. It was badly executed as well because they just started shooting. It, so yeah, I think there is much more to this than just a couple of threatening emails and wiretaps. This is a far more um, serious situation. And I do honestly believe that the Kiwis and the English ECB have done the right thing in withdrawing from from the test the touring series in Pakistan. What then happens then with the Cricket World Cup and future test and touring series of one days and T20s in Pakistan? That in itself, that in itself is a different question. What the ICC do and the conversations the various governing bodies nationally have to come up with is, do teams feel safe going on tours there? Do other test nations do other countries who want to tour Pakistan in cricket want to do that? And I think at the moment, if two of the major test nations at the higher end of the test rankings are going, we're withdrawing, and the fact that I think the West Indies was the last test side to go there. I think the West Indies and Zimbabwe, I think, are the two test sides to be brave enough to go, yeah, we'll we'll play in Pakistan. And that tells you something. So whether Pakistan is going to have to play the rest of their games again in Dubai, in the UAE, like they have done for most of the last decade, we'll have to wait and see. We know that players have played in the Pakistan Premier League, which is their version of the IPL, the PPL of both Test nations. In recent years, it's an interesting one. We'll have to see what the ICC releases in a statement. We'll have to see what happens. Frederick Fitzgerald plays basketball 6 times in a row. Was an absolute war. So in regards to what happens, I'm in favour of those two teams pulling out. As I said, it's a lot. I think the situation is far more complicated than what's been released in the press. It has obviously happened and developed very, very quickly. In regards to the future, in regards to the future when it comes to cricket in Pakistan, I mean, we've been down this road before. We'll have to see what happens. I can see there being another situation where matches are played in Dubai again. But as I said, other countries have had issues with civil unrest and terrorism and been able to host test series. So there's a far deeper issue. Oh, Derby County have been deducted 12 points due to going into administration. This is now official. Derby County have entered administration. Derby County have entered administration, have been deducted 12 points, which means I do believe Wycombe Wanderers owner is now going to be taking legal action now, because they're saying that this administration should have happened last season. And we'll see. But if I can quickly go, will Norwich? No, not with the way they've started this season. The other promoted sides like Brentford are doing a whole lot better than Norwich. Norwich have really not done well enough for me, considering how they played last season. I don't think Norwich will stay up. Right, so Derby County deducted 12 points. The Championship club announced their intention to call administrators only on Friday. With Mel Morris saying that COVID had cost them 20 million in lost revenue, but loads of clubs are going through that situation. So I don't think it's going. They were having problems before then. Mel Morris has spent the past few days talking to players and staff whose jobs are now uncertain. Now, remember, Wayne Rooney only had like 5 players signed to contracts a week and a half before the season started. So that's interesting. Wayne Rooney's Rams dropped to the foot of the table on -2 points. Andrew Hosking, Carl Jackson, Andrew Adrianaku, managing directors at business advisory firm Quantuma, have been appointed joint administrators. We're in the early stages of assessing the options available to the club and would invite any interested parties to come forward. That's one of the administrators. Our immediate objective is to ensure the club completes all its fixtures in the Championship this season and finding interested parties to safeguard the club and its employees. The EFL said it had already had constructive discussions with Quantuma and will remain in regular dialogue. EFL Chief Executive Trevor Birch said, "I appreciate this is a challenging and concerning period for everyone associated with the club, particularly the staff and supporters, and it is our intention to work proactively with the administrators and all relevant parties with the objective of securing a long-term and viable future for Derby County." Apparently, Mel Morris became Derby County's sole owner in 2015. He's been actively looking to sell for 2 years since 2019, following their playoff final defeat to Villa under Frank Lampard. So when Lampard was manager. Morris says the club has lost 200 million since 2015. So clearly they haven't been playing by financial fair play then if he's lost 200 million. A first takeover deal was said to have collapsed in the aftermath of an EFL charge in January related to the sale of Derby's Pride Park to Mel Morris for 80 million. I will get to your questions in a second. Despite previously being listed at worth half that at 41 million. The stadium sale allowed the club to post a pre-tax profit of 14.6 million in 2017-2018, and therefore met the EFL's spending rules, which we know aren't properly enforced because the entire league would be relegated. I'm not joking. If the EFL was to actually implement the fit and proper persons test and financial fair play and spending rules, 2/3 of the league are in breach and would be deducted points, and that's kind of embarrassing for the Championship. Can't be having that. The charge was dismissed in August 2020, but the Rams face a possible separate points deduction, speculated to be another 9 points over their accounting policies, with no decision made on the punishment, so they're not actually out of the woods yet. In March of this year, Derventio Holdings, who were backed by the Abu Dhabi-based Bin Zayed Group, where have we heard that name before, saw their takeover bid end, while another from Spanish businessman Eric Alonso was called off in May. Derby have been under a transfer embargo since before the summer window opened, meaning the Rams have only been allowed to sign free agents with strict conditions on salaries, because Wayne Rooney basically said, I have no players available. And I feel sorry for Wayne Rooney. For all the all the criticism he gets, I actually feel sorry for him trying to assemble a squad to play. Morris told BBC Radio Derby on Sunday that there had been something in the region of 15 inquiries for the club over the weekend, 2 or 3 which would be very serious. On the pitch, Derby were 12th, right? They were 12th before this points deduction. However, the automatic penalty for going into administration will put the Rams 6 points adrift of second bottom Nottingham Forest, their East Midlands rivals. So currently, they're on -2. Forest are on 4 points, Hull on 5, Peterborough on 7, Swansea on 7, and Blackpool on 8. They're in trouble. The Derby situation echoes the 1984 crisis. We've been here before. Derby were also in serious financial trouble in 1984, less than a decade after the second of their Division 1 title wins, when former chairman Stuart Webb was a member of the board, and he criticised Morris's decision to walk away from the current situation. "We worked relentlessly to keep the club alive, which in the end we were able to do. We all worked together to keep it going, but at this point it looks as though it's come to the end, and it's really worrying for everyone. Once the administrator is appointed, then we'll really find out what is the extent of the problems and how it's going to be dealt with. It's not going to be pleasant." Under Morris, the only other board members were Company Secretary Stephen Pearce and former Derby captain and manager Roy McFarland. Webb added, "Mel Morris came in as a highly successful businessman, but was clueless about running a football club. You need experienced people who can manage a huge business. You need to get the club on an even footing. And if you go deeper down into a financial mire, take advice, but don't walk away." Derby now facing the prospect of relegation to League One and insolvency. Former Leeds United chairman Gerald Krasner told BBC Derby if they don't sell the club, then it's liquidation and expulsion like Bury and clubs before them. This would be a great shame with the history of Derby. Then they're talking about but then they're talking about, right, this is interesting. The worry for supporters is not the immediate 12-point deduction. It is the next move by the EFL regarding the unsubmitted accounts. Morris told me exclusively on Sunday that there is a failure of profit and sustainability rules in the recalculated documents by the... Oh dear. So they're facing another 9 points, basically. They're in serious trouble. Right. I'll have to do a video on Derby County going into administration. That's going to be very interesting. Right. what happened to them? They were changed for most of his. Yes, basically the owner's Mel Morris is a shit. Basically, he's done some fiddling of the books. And he's been cool. I remember when Wigan Athletic got the points deduction 2 years ago. They were one of the form teams in the second half of the year. It was a shame. Now, if Derby had gone down last year, Wycombe stay up, and this is where that legal challenge is coming from with Wycombe. Just imagine if Derby went down last year and this happened in League Two. Yes. Any Brighton fans, Lamptey has actually started after like a year out. Yeah. So basically, what's been happening with Derby? Um, yeah, this has been rumbling on since last season. Wycombe are launching a legal appeal. They won't get instated into the championship this season, but they're basically saying that this administration with the EFL should have happened last year. Then there was the transfer embargo. So Wayne Rooney obviously came out and said, "I've only got eight senior players on the books. I can't form a team." And this is like a week and a half before the season started. This is back in August, just before the season started. I haven't got any players. They've now been hit with this 12-point deduction. And they're now facing an accountancy issue, which could lead to another 9 points. So Derby County are in serious trouble. Now, we could see a situation where if there are deals on the table, which is what seems very likely, that there are interested parties to buy this club. That's fine. Mel Morris has been obviously trying to sell the club for 2 years now. But this is a guy who clearly overvalued the stadium so the club could report a pre-tax profit which meets EFL spending rules. So he's bent the rules in order to avoid a points deduction a couple of seasons ago, and there were question marks about the sale of the stadium at an overvalued price to break EFL spending rules to then get round the spending rules. So, all honesty, the situation that we're facing is clearly the owner is not fit to run the football club. We have another Bury situation where the club could basically go out of business, be liquidated. The owner's claiming he's lost 200 million in 6 years. He's claiming that COVID's cost him a fortune. Now, there was a rescue package that was sorted out last season before last, and beginning of this season, just gone, to support the Championship, League One and League Two, cushion the blow. They've basically been given an arbitrary wage cap by the EFL. They've got a transfer embargo, so they can only sign free agents. They are in trouble. And I can see another Bury situation. As what we were discussing at the beginning of the live stream in regards to Barcelona and the situation they're facing. Derby is in trouble. The fact they could be hit with a further 9 points deduction, they're as good as relegated. Even though Wayne Rooney did a fantastic job keeping them in the Championship last season, they should have been deducted these points last season. They should be playing in League One right now. And I have every sympathy with Wycombe Wanderers because they've raised the point, well, proceedings were started against them last year. They should have been deducted these points last year. Yeah, QPR had been in trouble before. Yeah, that's a known. That's a known. That's a well-known. That's a well-known fact. QPR have been in problems. Charlton, they've had issues. Portsmouth is a very famous case. But Bolton, Wigan, whole host of clubs. This is north of the border. It's even more. As I was saying at the beginning of the live stream, this is not a new problem. Not a new problem at all. clearly Mel Morris should have never been able to pass the fit and proper persons test. He's clearly broken Football League rules in regards to, financial stability rules or whatever, financial rules in regards to the stadium, where he overvalued it to sell it to himself. Oh yeah, the club sells the stadium to itself at double the value. So yeah, he's to post a profit so they get around the EFL spending rules. But the EFL doesn't enforce those spending rules because they would have to deduct points from basically 2/3 of the championship. Do you get what I mean? So the EFL has been very weak in the governance on the financial side, the financial governance of the game. The EFL and the FA have been weak on the governance side and the Premier League for forever. Look, there's been, you've got the fit and proper, you've got the percentage of revenue. I think the spending rules go against income, revenue, expenditure. So it's not technically a cap because some clubs have bigger stadiums and better revenue streams than others. So if you're a Wycombe, for example, or a smaller Championship or League One or League Two club with a smaller stadium, smaller gate receipt revenue, smaller budget, less of a fan base, so less merchandise sales, you're not going to be able to compete against the likes of, a bigger club. And clearly, Coventry City, yeah. Bury is obviously the example we use in the last years of club going out of business because of a dodgy owner like this. Players aren't sure if they're going to get paid. The players aren't sure they're getting paid. The club staff, that's the tea lady to the club shop staff to the full-time stewards, the groundskeepers. I think there's a hotel at Pride Park. The whole shebang. I wouldn't say the players' wages are the real problem, because these are players who are like free agents who don't have a job basically. Apart from this club gave them a job, so these are like players who are just happy to have a contract. These guys, they were limited on wages as well. The EFL said you've got a salary cap, so these guys are basically taking the league minimum. In what I'm saying, it's the owner. The owner is the crook here. It's not the players' fault. Well, yeah, it's not the players' fault. It's not the club staff. It's the guy who owns the joint. He's been fiddling the rules. He hasn't given the accountancy books over to the EFL. He hasn't been transparent. He's done a few dodgy dealings with the stadium. And we have a Bury all over again. We have a Portsmouth where dodgy financial dealings, which are bordering on criminality. He's doubled. So the stadium was valued at 41 million, and he sells it to himself for 80 million to then post a pre-tax profit of 14 point something million to meet EFL rules, which aren't enforced properly because the EFL doesn't want to relegate half the championship and throw them out because it's embarrassing. I wouldn't say it's the players' fault. It's the industry's fault for allowing the player wages to get to where they are. It's not the players' fault. Let's be clear on that. I wouldn't blame the players in this situation. You have to look. The buck stops at the top. The guy who employs everyone, because he's the guy who's run this club into. Because this club could be at the top of the table. They were 12th, so they weren't doing bad this season. So it's not the players' fault. They're performing. Not the man. It's not Wayne Rooney's fault. He actually kept them in the league. For all the criticism he faces, he kept them in the championship. The owner. It is the owner. Buck stops with him. He was clearly never fit to run the club at any point. And you could say COVID's had an impact. But if the club was well run, it could have weathered that impact and taken that blow and gone, okay, we're well run. We've got a good financial base. We're prudent. We're well run. We're returning a profit. We've saved some money for a rainy day. We can cover these losses. They weren't well run. They've been badly run. The stadium sale is dodgy, if anything I've seen. That's tantamount to fraud. That's a criminal offence. So there's a lot of question marks to be asked about the club. And yeah, you know, as I said at the beginning of the live stream, if you want to watch it again from the beginning, the Barcelona situation, they're 1.3 billion euros in debt. And you have to ask the question, where's all the money gone? This is a club that's run by their fans. Where's the money gone, and where's the transparency in that situation? And of course, there's a breaking point. And as I was saying, 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, when Bury went out of business, before COVID, the warning signs were there that, much like the financial crisis in 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, with the banks, the sector, the football industry, as part of the sports industry, is overheating, in a sense that just spending money, is outstripping the money that's actually in the system. There's not enough money in the system, and it's been thrown around. Basically, it's licensed to print money, but there's not enough money in the system to sustain the spending. Basically, there's a negative surplus. Basically, there's a debt surplus rather than a cash surplus. And what has occurred is the spending is outstripping what is there. The spending is outstripping the assets, and it's reached a point where it's starting to fall apart, because it's not just Derby County, it's not just Bury, it's not just Barcelona. Christ, if we're saying that Derby's lost 200 million in 6 years, look at the state Barcelona is in. So it's the system that's at fault, and it's the people in the boardrooms, the money men behind the scenes who are pumping money into these clubs or signing the checkbooks, who are the problem. It's not. You can argue the players are overpaid. You can argue that the player wages are out of kilter, and it's part of the problem. Yeah, but you can't blame the players for this situation. They're doing their job. They're not guaranteed to get paid at the end of the month. Now, I think there were concerns about the players getting paid in August, right? So the situation there is, oh god, there's some idiots in the chat today, aren't there? The situation with Derby is at least I can grow some, Bill. At least I can grow some. And the fact you're using capital letters, you're just an insult, so go away. We can talk about this now. Look at Norwich. They're a well-run club with regards to finances, but they're not prepared to spend to win and stay in the league. Yeah, I think they're trying to basically save themselves for a rainy day. I think with Norwich, I think the people. Oh, go away! You really fucking go away. I like my beard. It's comforting. It's comforting. God, you're an arse. The situation with Norwich is, they're well run. And I think they're just helping the viewing figures. Ironically, they're just helping the viewing figures. I find that hilarious. They'll probably make another fake account, but they just help the viewing figures. Ironically, but yeah, But no, with Norwich, yeah, they are well run financially, and um, they yeah they are well run financially. So there's no in my mind problem with that. Um, what I find interesting um, in regards to that is I think that they've worked out that the writing is on the wall for some other clubs, and there's going to have to be a reduction in spending. There's going to have to. I mean, the debate about having a salary cap in European club football is growing, and I think the calls are going to continue to grow. Ironically, it actually will benefit the sport longer term. I think it will. Um, you have to get the players on board, but I think anyone with half a brain cell would agree with that. Well, they were a solid Premier League side until their relegation before last. Um, I think yeah they've worked out behind the scenes. They've worked out in order to keep the club viable financially. They're doing a West Brom and what Crystal Palace used to do. They're a yo-yo team now. They're too good for the. There's about 8 or 10 clubs that are too good for the Championship and not good enough for the Premier League. Um, in a regard, but I think I wouldn't say they're not prepared. It's can you attract that kind of player to take you to the next level? Um, and I think with the shitstorm that's coming, and I think we are going to see a shitstorm coming in regards to the financial side of the game. Not, I wouldn't say hitting meltdown, but hitting a point where more clubs are going to start, like a Derby County, like a Barcelona, admitting to being in trouble. West Brom have become a yo-yo team again. They were a solid Premier League side for a few seasons, and then they went off and imploded. Um, there is a what I would say is there's a league in between two leagues basically, where there's about 8 10 clubs who are in between the Premier League and the Championship, really, who are stuck at fighting over that particular you know um, patch of ground, where in reality they are light years ahead of the rest of the Championship, but they're not quite on the same level as the Premier League. And you can do the same as there's a whole bunch of clubs that are too good for League One but not good enough for the Championship, and vice versa for League Two and League One. There's that bracket, and some teams do manage to do that promotion and stay up, and have that investment plan, and have an owner who's willing to, or ownership group who are willing to spend the money and have a plan. There are others who are just like, what will stabilise in this league, and there's others who are going, well, a good result is to finish just above the relegation zone and stay in the league, and same again next season. Um, I think with Norwich, they're well run financially. But look at Brentford; they're well run financially. They're giving it a crack this season. But they've had a long term plan for several years now with Brentford. They intend to be a Premier League side long term, um, and they've done a good bit of talent scouting. They've definitely done the talent scouting across all the European leagues and domestically. They've developed local talent, and they have had the playoff curse, got over that, and I think Brentford will be all right. Um, they invested their money wisely in the new stadium, which I think is a brilliant facility, by the way. And they yeah, definitely going in the right direction. Fulham, Fulham is an example, alongside QPR, is an American throwing money at the problem. it's the American solution of throw money at the problem, it will solve itself. They don't know how to run a sports franchise. Their ownership also owned the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the worst NFL teams of all time. That's all you need to know. And they tried to buy Wembley, and that didn't go very well. Fulham will forever be not good enough. Randy Lerner owned Villa, made a mess of that. I'm not a big fan of American money in English football, but it's here to stay. The sport, as I've done videos on the sporting culture in regards to the North American sporting culture and the European sporting culture. There's a video on the channel. Their sporting model is different to ours. Oh yeah, look, Premier Sports, BT Sport get all the crap basically when it comes to certain sports. BT Sports hemorrhaging sports rights. Premier Sports picking up a fair few. Premier Sports is growing, so they're picking up sport, but BT Sports hemorrhaging, hemorrhaging sports deals. Ipswich, they really, what happened to them? I remember 20 years ago they were a Premier League side. Yeah, North American. I mean, their sports culture is different. It's franchise based, so the owner can go, "I'm not making money in this location. I'm going to move it. I'm going to move the team." Whereas here, it's definitely community based. The league structures are different. The they have a draft system over there. We have youth academies to bring the players through the system from youth underage levels, youth levels, school levels. And all that. Well, it depends on the sport. I mean, in the NHL, not all the teams are relocated, but branding changes. You will see different logo changes, but the team might stay in the same location. But you'll see leagues expand. I think every one of those major leagues wants to hit 32 teams. DAZN is an Eddie Hearn media outlet. Anything to do with the Hearns, avoid, do not buy into it. Basically, that is a battle between the subscription TV companies and making money. Basically, it's to do with where the money comes from when it comes to pay-per-view boxing and MMA. And it's basically that's why he set it up, is to maximize his profits. And there's also oh look, BT is hemorrhaging money, and BT Sports been hemorrhaging money since the day it was set up as a TV channel. They took on the old ESPN bandwidth and the old Setanta gap in the market, and what was the leftover of the ITV sport rights that had been bought, that gap in the pay-per-view subscription TV market that Sky Sports didn't want. Eurosport took a chunk out of ESPN as well. Premier Sports was just up and coming, and BT Sport took the rest of the bandwidth crap that none of the other broadcasters, big or small, wanted. BT's just lost the FA Cup rights, but they do have the Champions League and Europa League, and that will be interesting if they want to pull out of sports TV. And they've been hemorrhaging money long before COVID. From the day they were set up, they started hemorrhaging money. They've lost money over hand over fist for years. They've lost the FA Cup to jointly for the BBC and ITV. So they've lost that revenue stream. They've got the MotoGP. What else have BT got sole rights of? They've got the MotoGP, but they've got something else on BT Sport. They've got most of the rugby union domestic club games. But basically, when BT Sport was set up, on the bandwidth they were given the old ESPN basically, and they were sort of ripping that carcass to pieces, and they got the old Setanta contract basically, which was a leftover of ITV Sport from a few years previously. So basically, they got the unenviable problem of getting the non-profitable crap that Sky didn't want, that Eurosport didn't want, and the up-and-coming Premier Sports, which was coming on the scene before they released their free sports, they didn't want that either. So they got a contract, basically, which had already lost a lot of money. And they were paying for rights to Scottish football that the other broadcasters didn't want, and they picked up all the crap. But then they also made a point to say we're going to be showcasing rugby union, a lot of rugby union club games. They made a big point on that. And who wants to watch the pro? They're splitting the Pro 14 with and the top 14 with Premier Sports. Premier Sports and Free Sports has the Welsh games, the South African provincial teams that are playing in the Pro League, and the Italian. The Scottish games are on BT, but the Irish, the Welsh, the Italian, and the South African games are on Premier. So actually, they get a shit deal out of that one for home games, not away, home games. So when teams are playing at home, when the Italian teams are at home, the Welsh teams are at home, South African teams, I think some of the Irish, and it's split. Premier Sports get a better deal out of the Pro 14. I think Pro 16 maybe is now. And obviously BT Sport and BT sponsor the Scotland national team, men's and women's in rugby union. I think they sponsor the football team as well. Basically, BT bought a shit deal. Basically, they bought debt basically, and they bought TV infrastructure of companies that had gone bust. They took over the bandwidth of ESPN, another which is owned by Disney, so that was losing money. ESPN is crap broadcasting. Trust me, ESPN is like the CNN of sport. It is so bad. So they basically took on bad contracts. Basically, there's a reason why my phone bill and internet bill is going up with EE. It's to prop up a failing TV company. There is no other way to describe the mess that the BT group, the BT group, basically has got themselves in recent years. They've been forced to sell off the OpenReach internet, infrastructure. If you have any kind of BT internet or EE or whatever, or PlusNet, your bills are going up to prop up a failing TV arm, which has been bleeding money since its inception all those years ago. In what, 20? I think it was it 2011, 2012? It's been quite some time. And they losing the FA Cup is a big loss. Big brand to lose. Just the FA Cup. Doesn't matter what sport they're losing a big iconic sports brand in the FA Cup for this season. That is going to hit them hard. Now I have BBC and ITV. I pay my TV license, so I can watch on the laptop the FA Cup. Don't have to worry. People go to me, oh, but you got an EE account. Yeah, but I'm not. No, and it's not as easy to find. I'm not installing an app to have to update that app to faff around when in reality I'm just going to legally stream it anyway and save myself. I'm not even hiding the fact that Tottenham would be cockerels, by the way. That's actually a bird, not a coyote, by the way. Um, but yeah, no, the whole thing is a mess. But if BT do pull out of the the sports TV market, and if they can, it will be catastrophic because this DAZN, no, anything to do with the Hearns, avoid it, because that'll all be pay per view only. It won't be subscription; it'll be pay per view. So you're paying by the day basically, which is not the same thing. Um, it gives more power back to Sky Sports. Premier Sports, while it's a great little TV network with the free sports arm of it, and doesn't have the financial power to to sweep in and buy up the TV rights. Doesn't have the money. It's a great little TV network, but it operates on a far smaller budget and far smaller running costs, much lower running costs than Sky and BT. They can't afford to come in and save the day. It will be catastrophic, especially for the lower leagues. Those same lower leagues that were being and sports that are being basically lashed over the barrel and held to financial ransom this time last year when we were talking about, clubs worried about going into administration, especially in football. When this time last year it was crisis, and yeah, the concern is that if BT does pull out or collapse, it won't collapse. The wider media group is too big. But if BT Sport ceases to exist or wants to or continues to lose TV rights, Christ. Amazon only has a small share. It's only allowed to have a small share. And there's concerns about the Amazon side of their media rights. The yeah, there are growing demands for more sport to be free to air, club sport, not necessarily international club sport, in a variety of sports to be free to air, taking some power back from Sky and BT and Premier Sports and all that. And there's starting to be a shift in that direction. It's interesting. We shall have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But with what's happened, with clubs now, Derby County announcing administration today, yeah, if BT does go, we're not interested in. I wouldn't say it needs to be one channel. I just think there needs to be more accessibility and more transparency in the whole process. I'm not a big fan of subscription only. What we saw when they were putting games on free to air the season before last, the viewership figures tell your own story. Even Ronaldo's first game back from Man United still got lower viewership figures than I think Southampton. Who was Southampton playing? Was it Southampton Leicester or Southampton Bournemouth or something? Got higher viewership figures. I think it was Southampton Bournemouth. Got higher viewership figures than Ronaldo's return, and that was 8 million worldwide. That was not 8 million in this country because there's not that many Man United fans in this country. Who do I support in the NHL? I'm a Jets fan, although I am wearing a Coyotes hoodie because, well, I have a soft spot for the Yotes. I had some family live out in Arizona for a while, so I have a little soft spot for the state of Arizona. Anyway, and I got this as a birthday present. So I like collecting sports gear. I got to get organising and go through all my jerseys and t-shirts and hoodies and sports memorabilia. I've got to do a bit of a reorganisation of the flat. I've been putting it off for months, and I've got to actually tidy up the flat and go through all my sports stuff. But I'm a Jets fan. I don't think there needs to be one channel because that's a monopoly, and that actually goes against broadcasting rules and industry regulation rules. Having a single operator, which is where I think the rugby league. The reason why they get away with rugby league being on Sky Sports for the club games is the Challenge Cup is on BBC. That's how they get round the Super League being stuck behind a paywall. That can't continue. If rugby league in this country is to be viable, that needs to change. But the deal with the World Cup and every game being on free to wear, that's a little sop. But it's not enough to grow the game. The game's in crisis. Do you think things like Let's Talk Saturday will exist? No, not with the constant changes that Sky are doing to basically placate a minority on the left. They've got rid of all the good presenters and they replaced them with tick box exercise. It's not great quality. I used to like Soccer Saturday when I used to go around my mum's. I used to put it on. I used to go around my mates to put it on just for the banter side of it in the build up to the game. But it's crap now. But it's like they got rid of Final Score on BBC. That doesn't take place anymore. I used to like the banter when they were discussing what was going on and going around the grounds. They got rid of that. So Final Score's gone from BBC. I don't think Soccer Saturday will last much longer. But I think the viewership figures would probably kill it rather than the format itself being tired. I think it's what we've seen with broadcast changes with the presenter lineup with Matt Le Tissier and co. They've now done a Paddy Power advert taking the piss out of them getting sacked by Sky. Yes, there's a Paddy Power advert where they're taking the piss out of themselves. Paddy Power going, we'll use these guys to give. Yeah, every sports broadcast, be it free to wear or satellite TV, will have that kind of panel show format. There's a reason why they all copy each other because it's a popular format. It's the presenting team you put together. There's the similar format on in Australia when it comes to the rugby league and the Aussie rules. Very similar format in that regard, and it's a popular format. Especially when you've got media and ex-players, especially if they're articulate. I think that's the important thing is getting articulate ex-players and ex-coaches to be part of the debate. If you've got just your general brain, not very good, not very articulate ex-player who may be exceptionally talented at what they do and may know what they're talking about, but they're not very, it doesn't work. But you've got to have the right characters to do it and the right ex-players and the right. I like the show, but I was like thinking about when the show started, phones and the internet didn't exist. So anyway, think about it. No, not really. When the show started, phones did exist, the internet did exist. It was just people. More people will watch the TV. More people were just like. People now are attached to these things and live their lives on these things. And I actually miss the day. I actually do miss the days where. I used to have my old Nokia 3310. Oh, I am that old. I am nearly 32, so I am that old. Yeah, I remember when Sky. I think that was a mistake taking Sky Sports News off Freeview. That was a massive blunder. Because our transfer deadline day, I used to whack that on. And this is another reason why I'm less interested in football now. Is it's becoming less accessible because more and more of it's behind a paywall. And the only games now that aren't behind a paywall, apart from internationals, is the FA Cup. The League Cup used to be on free-to-air TV. The various European club tournaments were on free-to-air TV. And over the last decade, that's been eroded. The last 2 decades, if you count the Cup Winners' Cup disappearing and then the rest of it. Yeah, and I think with that, yeah, you just lost because people. Here's they've done the research. They've worked out that in this country, out of I think it's 30 million or 35, 40 million households, about half of them don't have Sky or BT Sport. And out of them, a lot of them don't have a Sky or BT TV package. So about half the country doesn't have Sky or BBC Sports anyway, be it financially or they just choose not to. So already you've lost half the nation out of your target audience. Um, yeah, the Bundesliga highlights used to be on ITV. Some of the Liga games were shown on ITV. The BBC used to show some Championship games about 5, 6 years ago for a couple of seasons, and they stopped for some reason, which was ridiculous. The whole Soccer Saturday, on Soccer AM and things like that. That was something I could get into. Now, I you know, yeah, that's something I could enjoy. But at the same time, and I'm being deadly honest here, the the situation at Sky is they're doing the tick box exercise, where tried and tested presenters who have a good relationship with each other, they work really well, are no longer there. Matt Letizia and co. They are reformatting the lineup all in one go. Match of the day. Match of the day is a popular format because they people do miss stuff. As in, yeah, you can get the score update, but it's still I do like Match of the Day, but I haven't actually watched Match of the Day for ages. And to be honest, I don't enjoy football as much anymore. I really don't. And yeah, I've lost an interest there. And part of the fact is, yeah, they did misjudge the market when they started putting everything. Oh, right, yeah, we're going to put everything behind a paywall because they were chasing the money, which again says to me that the with the TV rights and the TV deals, the clubs were having money problems and they weren't admitting to it far sooner before COVID. And they wanted to downplay those problems. Um, I think that the financial problems within football, especially, were definitely downplayed, and it more downplayed and were definitely worse than what we realised. And yeah, they have misjudged the market with putting on BT and Sky. Absolutely, the fact that half the households in this country don't have BT or Sky tells you all you need to know. I'm not going to get into the racism debate and the ex-players who they interview or get on there, or female presenters. I think if you are capable to do the job, I'm colourblind. I'm gender blind, but there's definitely a bias for changing lineups that have worked brilliantly, where through no fault of their own, people are out of a job. Do we need to get rid of the 3 p.m. blackout? That was there to protect tendencies. They temporarily got rid of the 3 p.m. blackout last season and the season before last during COVID. Other countries and leagues don't have the 3 p.m. blackout. It's a broadcast agreement that the broadcasters have agreed with the league. It was designed to protect crowd numbers and encourage people to go to games. It it happens around the world. It depends on the country you're in, and the league you're watching, and the sport you're watching. But there are regional blackouts, and for example, I like international ice hockey. I like the World Championships. I cannot watch if Great Britain are playing a game and it's on YouTube because the World Championship ice hockey. I can't watch that game because it's on a broadcast blackout because it is being hosted by a host broadcaster in this country, Premier Free Sport. Can't watch it. I think that's wrong because I cannot access that facility, but I can't access it. Geo blockout. It's a geo block. It's the same. It's designed. What it's designed to do is meant to protect attendances and match day attendance. So actually, the products you're selling overseas and domestically, you've got a full stadium. But it doesn't matter because you're broadcasting to the whole nation. And to be fair, what we've seen is the claim from the clubs about 4 or 5 years ago they could let us in for free was a lie. They need us to go to games. We are more important than they claimed we were. And people are, starting to turn their back on the ticket prices anyway are obscene. With the amount of money they make from the TV revenue, the ticket prices are too much, far too much, and the lie we were sold is that ticket prices would stay low because the TV money would compensate and cover the fact that try and keep TV prices stable and fair. With all the money that came in the game, the players get paid more. And to be fair, I don't fault them. We can agree or disagree that they're overpaid. That backfired. And then when we draw against Southampton, and they had less shots on target and 70% possession. Well done, Pep. Yeah, I think the days of Man City being the dominant club are over somehow. I think the fact that Pep relies on mercenary players and the checkbook is starting to come home to roost. Just saying. In regards to COVID has exposed the money problems. It's exacerbated some and caused some others, but it has basically exposed what is basically a badly run sport with a lot of corruption and mismanagement, both financial and grassroots and the whole lot. Football is a sport that's rotten to the core, but I was falling out of love with it long before COVID. Yes, I did see what Pep said about fans. It was hilarious. Starting the season as we ended the last one. The debate about, the European Super League, all that, struggling to score. Well, we're starting the season as we ended the last one in a variety of ways. The issues with what Pep said. It's a well-known fact they pump crowd noise into the Etihad to create some atmosphere. I think you have to question what the ticket price is for Man City games. Bear in mind, this is a club that has a license to print money. They could let the fans in for nothing. They could let their fans in for fuck all. This is a club that has a license to print money with the ownership. But, the clubs at war with UEFA and vice versa, they don't like each other. The attendances of Champions League games are shocking. And have been for a while. And that's to do with the financial fair play investigation. But they're not the only club which is struggling with empty seats at games. It's more pronounced when it's a team that's at the top and winning a lot of trophies. But you have, if that's the case, then young kids growing up, young families can't afford to go to games, and this is pre-COVID. Like, I can't afford to go. I'm a single bloke. I can't afford to to go to games. I'm kind of actually lucky that my girlfriend left me because I was going to buy tickets to the Rugby League World Cup, but I didn't know what price they were going to be. 35 quid. That's not including travel, food and drink, if you're an away fan. If I was an away fan, God forbid, I've got to fucking stay up and find a hotel or B&B in Manchester. That's near to the ground. And I don't drive. I only have a little motorcycle. I'm not riding 250 miles. To go to a game or get a train. Yeah, that's just the ticket price. That's not including transport to and from. And if you're an away fan or even a fan who might be a Man City fan who doesn't live in Manchester, this is what club owners don't factor in. I'm a Blackburn fan. I don't live in Lancashire. Most Blackburn fans live in the Blackburn area. Not gonna lie. But if you're trying to sell your product globally or nationally, right, you've got your core fan base in the local area where the club is, generally speaking, in this country, right? So if you're a Hull City fan, you're going to live in the Hull Humberside area, right? If you are a Leeds fan, most likely you're going to be living in the Leeds, that part of Yorkshire, because you've got Bradford just across the road, pretty much. Sheffield, you've got the two clubs, and Sheffield's a big city. Manchester, you've got a lot of clubs in Greater Manchester. It's not just Man United and Man City. Bury obviously have now gone by the wayside, but you've got Bolton in there, you've got Wigan in Greater Manchester, Salford, you've got Stockport County. They're actually a reasonably well supported club in the non-league, and they have been in the Football League in the past. So there's a whole host of professional clubs in Greater Manchester and Oldham, and they've all got pretty solid fan bases. Historically, anyway. Not sure how many Oldham fans are left, but historically, it's sort of like father like son. You follow what your father did. But with the rise of the Premier League, and it's the same in London. I think one of the other live streams I counted off like 15 professional football clubs in Greater London who play in the Football League. And then you've got like the non-league clubs at semi-pro and pro level. God, I've run out of fingers and toes. But you've got this global brand in the Premier League and this global brand in the Football League, right? So you'll have your hardcore fans who are from an area around your club. When you get to the bigger cities, which have got divided loyalties, where you've got more than one club in the town, like Nottingham, you've got Notts County and Nottingham Forest. Sheffield, you've got Sheffield United, Sheffield Wednesday. Liverpool got Liverpool and Everton and Tranmere across the Mersey, for example, right? In Birkenhead. Bristol, you've got Bristol City, Bristol Rovers. There are some towns and cities that have more. Dundee United, more than one club. Rangers, Celtic, Partick, another one. Queen of the South. There's more than one club in Glasgow of a professional level. Edinburgh, you've got Hearts and Hibs, and even Edinburgh City, who've made it into the Scottish Football League. So you know what I mean. So yeah, some towns and cities in this country have more than one professional club. And to selling this brand. Now, the nearest professional football team to me is Reading. The next nearest professional team to me, I actually believe, is Brentford. I believe is Brentford or Oxford United to get to. Yeah. PSG, PSG have been going since 1970. There was a period of time where they were in the second division in France. It's only recently they've become the most successful team for trophies won. They're not the biggest club in France. Marseille, Lyon, there's another club as well. Marseille, Lyon, and Nice all got bigger fan bases. More history behind them. Like PSG is look at what's their youth system like? How many youth products get into their first team? None. 1970 they were founded. Merger of two clubs that had gone bankrupt. Um, they were Saint Etienne. They're not now. When it comes to trophies in French football, they were not anymore. Saint Etienne, no, definitely a successful historical club. I remember watching Saint Etienne in the Cup Winners' Cup and the Champions League and what was the UEFA Cup back in the 90s. So I remember when Saint Etienne were a very, very solid European outfit. Not the case anymore. Do I think Brentford will stay up? I think they will. I do think they will. They've started the season best out of the three promoted teams, and they were the playoff winners. So they are meant to be the weakest out of the three promoted sides, but I can see them staying up there. Um, but uh, you know, yeah, the fact they were a merger of two clubs tells you what you need to know about the history of football in Paris. So yeah, the fact that without the money they would be nowhere again tells you what you need to know about the strength of French football. Um, but yeah, Burnley are having a tough start. They had a tough start to last season and the season before that. The last couple of seasons, they're Burnley are slow starters. I think Sean Dyche will get them over the line, but they're historically slow starters when it comes to starting seasons. So watch this space of Burnley. Season's still young. I think Norwich are the team that are in most trouble, but yeah, Burnley don't look great. Um, yeah, I mean, Paris Saint Germain, as I say, their history isn't great in the sense of how they were founded and the fact that, yeah, um, their youth system is crap. I'm sorry, but look at their first team and how many of them are French internationals, one, and how many of them are actually come through the Paris Saint Germain youth setup. And I think you'll find none have come through PSG's youth setup. Other French clubs develop the French players basically. PSG do not do anything for the French game. No offense, PSG do nothing to develop the French game and sell the French game as this is a great competitive league. It's just foreign mercenary players and foreign money, and it does nothing for the domestic game. That's my personal opinion on PSG. They're doing nothing for developing French players and nothing for developing the French game as a product. The other French clubs, like your Marseilles, like your Nice, like your Lyon, Saint Etienne, Nantes, Lille, Lens, Montpellier, Toulouse, they're the clubs that Bordeaux. They're the clubs that the youth systems work. Then their good players get scouted and end up overseas. That's the problem. There is no money in French football. PSG, great, they've got all the money. They're doing nothing to develop the game in France. Nothing. The fact that on the UEFA coefficient, the French league is now ranked the sixth league behind the Portuguese league tells you there is something wrong with the domestic game in France. Only one French team has won a Champions League, and that is Marseille. In a season, they committed match fixing. Let that sink in. Just let that sink in. So that's my opinion on PSG. They've done nothing to develop. I would say they've done nothing. They haven't done enough. With all the money they've got, they should have a brilliant academy. Young French kids should want to play for them. French players should want to play for them. But the best French talent comes through the other clubs like Nice, Montpellier, Marseille, Lyon, Saint Etienne, Nantes, Bordeaux, Toulouse, Lille, Lens, Le Havre. You know, it that's where I think it's embarrassing. That yeah, other Auxerre, Djibril Cisse, he was developed through Auxerre. He was an Auxerre youth talent. I seem to remember back in the day. PSG, what you've named what Sacco and Kimpembe. And even then, they're not actually French. They're first or second generation immigrants, which is ironic. The French game itself is in a mess. It's not the most watched sport in France. The TV deal domestically in France has gone down the toilet. Um, the fact that players, when they finish a match against PSG, want to take photos and get autograph from Messi shows how out of depth the league is. Um, I wouldn't say. I think it has been in the last 10, 15, 20 years. The French league is just. It's not worth watching. I used to watch the highlights on Channel 4 on a Sunday morning because there was no Sunday games because France is a Catholic country. So there was no games on a Sunday, and all the games were played on a Saturday. I used to watch the highlights show on Channel 4, and this was just after Serie A had come off Channel 4, so they had to have some kind of. And actually, it was quite an entertaining watch. The highlights package, their version of Match Today, and Lyon were the dominant side for a couple of years. And it was actually kind of a good giggle about 15, 20 years ago watching the French highlight. It was kind of it was fun. Um, but yeah, no, the best players don't stay in the French league system. They unfortunately don't, and that is a problem. Look what the best French players are playing for the most part. They're not playing in France, and that is generally quite worrying. And it's been that way since the Euro 2000. They started bleeding out of French football. They win the World Cup, and a lot of that French team were still playing in France. Actually, there was a fair few of them playing in France. And if more leagues continue to be like dominated, like Bayern in the Bundesliga and PSG in the French league, I don't know. To be honest, it doesn't really bother me on a personal level. My love for the game and the sport has long since gone. I'll still watch it. I'll still watch internationals. I'll still watch the FA Cup. I'll still try and watch the Champions League final and Europa League final. Obviously, I'll be watching the World Cup next year. I'll try and watch as many FA Cup games as I can. I didn't watch any of the World Cup qualifiers the other week. But yeah, like if the French league continues to be uncompetitive, I mean, yes, Lille won the title last year, and that is a brilliant moment. You know, Lyon very close to coming second and actually winning the league themselves, which was good to see. That PSG aren't running away with it anymore, and that's always positive. And yeah, they got a lot of egos at PSG that could all fall apart because Poch has already seemed to have fallen out with Messi. They're not getting on. So we'll see what happens with Messi at PSG. But it's not healthy. I mean, look at Scottish football. It's not healthy when one or two teams dominate. As a City fan, I hope City don't win the league a lot over the next 5 years. But yeah, I would have to admit, yeah, when one team or a handful of teams start dominating the league, and there's very little challenge to them. Scotland, for example, there's a reason why Scottish football's in the shit. Yeah, it's no fun to watch that particular league, which is why a lot of the Central and Eastern European leagues, no one watches them anymore. When you used to have the Cup Winners' Cup and the old UEFA Cup when it was straight knockouts, home and away legs, and the old Champions League format, it was actually great fun to watch some of these teams because now it's they're going to be a second-rate team going to get battered, pumped. Oh my god, sneezing a bit. So yeah, Scotland's not producing great players anymore. The Euros highlighted how out of their depth they were. I think it's a learning curve for Scotland, but their qualifying campaign for the World Cup isn't going great either. So Steve Clarke's got his work cut out to get them back to another major tournament. Yeah, Bucharest. I mean, obviously, there's a reason why Steaua and Bucharest and Red Star Belgrade aren't the teams they were. Civil conflict as civil war in Yugoslavia and the fall of the Ceausescu regime would do that. Political violence will do that. But yeah, no, Italy's not so bad. Juventus obviously finished fifth last year, but Germany's going the same way, where it's buying every year, and I don't think that's sustainable. There's a reason why Germany didn't do very well in the Euros. I think the wheels are starting to come off, and I think there will be rules put in place to make sure Bayern don't win it every year and make it a more competitive league. Um, and there are signs that it's becoming a little bit more competitive, and there's signs that Bayern are starting to slow down. And they're not the team that they were. So there are signs that things are starting to change slowly. But yeah, when the league is uncompetitive as some of these leagues have been, bloody hay fever. There's still pollen about because my neighbours have planted loads of evergreen plants and pots, and some of them pollinate quite late, and you get those autumn flowers. And it's horrible, and you just have sneezing fits. Brutal, and I hate it. And it's bloody technically now autumn as of yesterday, and I had a sneezing fit. But some plants do pollinate into October, so bloody ridiculous. But yeah, I've been going now for. Jim said the other day he wants a playoff to stop by winning every year. The fact that the Portuguese league is now ranked on the coefficient higher than the French league tells you something, though. But yes, only 5 teams that still exist have won it in 80 years. Other teams have won it, but they no longer exist, so therefore they're not kept on the coefficient. Yeah, hopefully Juventus don't win it for a few years. I'll teach them. But well, yeah, I mean, look, there are a couple of other teams now in Portugal that are challenging Porto, Sporting, and Benfica for their dominance. They're not as dominant as what they were. Braga is the upstart team that is starting to create waves in Portugal. There's a couple of other teams as well who do win the odd trophy here or there in the Portuguese system, which is actually only a good thing. Yeah, Boa Vista. That's another team that. It's Boa Vista, the forgotten Portuguese team. They're the team everyone forgets comes from Portugal. Boa Vista. Guimarães as well. There's a couple of teams that have won trophies in Portugal. They're just not as well known, but they're there. Yeah, when a league becomes very uncompetitive and the same teams keep winning, it is a problem. And I don't think Bayern will keep dominating forever. It will be more harmful for the German national side, and their national program is already showing that there are issues within the German national setup. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll just see what happens long term with the Bundesliga. But I do think Bayern, the momentum is starting to slow down now. Yeah, there's some interesting. The Portuguese clubs, there's some interesting. It's like Braga's home stadium is in an old quarry and only has 2 stands. And it was specifically built for Euro 2004. Yeah, excitement. Yeah, if you've got a competitive, multiple teams going for the title, multiple teams winning trophies or competing for trophies, be it domestically or in Europe, puts eyes in your league. That's why the Premier League is the most watched league. is the trophies get scattered around because you've got the League Cup, you've got the FA Cup, you've got the Premier League, you've got Leicester won the FA Cup last season and the Charity Shield, and are a regular top 6 side now. I don't think that Premier League win was a one-off. Since 2011, Man City have been winning trophies. Before then, 30 odd years without trophy. Other clubs are starting to win stuff. If you look at the history of English football, clubs go through cycles. And we'll just have to see what happens when it comes to trophies this season and who wins what. But the fact that Lille won the French League last year, the fact that Leicester won the FA Cup last year, Atletico, I think was it Real Sociedad won there, and Villarreal won their first trophies in the last 12 months. Villarreal winning the Europa League, Real Sociedad winning the Copa del Rey and holding it for 4 days before Barcelona won the other one because that was the delayed final from the season prior. But Real Sociedad winning the Copa del Rey. There are some new teams winning silverware or getting back to winning silverware for the first time, like Lille, for example, for the first time in a while. These are good positive signs. Juventus not winning Serie A last season actually benefited the national side. Right? So teams winning their first trophies in a while or their first trophies ever is a good sign. And Juventus not winning Serie A, ironically, the Italian national squad win the bloody Euros. Juventus come 5th in their domestic competition. And Mancini was selecting players from some very unfashionable clubs, like Sassuolo had players in that Italy squad. Parma had players in that Italy squad. Yes, and Johnston winning a cup double. Again, that hasn't happened for years. 20 odd years since that last happened in Scottish football, that a non-old firm team winning both trophies. So we are seeing a changing, some green shoots of hope for the competitiveness of club football, which for many, many years, in my view, has become less and less competitive and more predictable and less enjoyable. And in the end, it can only benefit having new names on trophies and new teams winning things. Leicester have got a fair few trophies in their trophy cabinet that aren't the Premier League. They won the League Cup multiple times. Premier League's in there. They've now got a Charity Shield and an FA Cup. Leicester could win the FA Cup again this year, and then they could win back-to-back FA Cups. That could be something. The Dutch League's not particularly. Oh my bloody snotty nine. The Dutch League's not particularly competitive as it should be. Used to be, not as it should be. That is a problem. But again, when a handful of clubs have all the money and all the power, it's never going to be as competitive as well. That's not a problem. It should be the governing bodies that have the power, not the clubs. Unfortunately, the clubs have a fair bit of power right now, and the governing bodies, there's a power battle between UEFA and then the domestic FAs, and then the clubs and the leagues. The leagues themselves have now brands. The leagues themselves are at war with their FAs, like the Liga and the Premier League don't get on with their domestic FAs as well as they should. The EFL technically is FA sanctioned, but has its own battles with the FA. The FA has its battles with UEFA. UEFA then has its battles with FIFA. So there's always power battles over the governance of the game. And we get these compromises like this Europa Conference League, which is basically sort of like the Cup Winners' Cup. It's meant to be the third tournament because UEFA fucked that up 22 years ago when they got rid of it. Well, technically they got rid of it in 97, but they phased it out in 99. The reformatting of the UEFA Cup to the Europa League. Why has it got everything got to have a league in it? The fact we've got group stages in these European, when these should be straight knockout. And then you've got managers complaining about fixture congestion, but they're adding more games. And now FIFA wants to have a 2-year World Cup cycle. That is again creating scheduling nightmare. And then got the Nations League. scheduling nightmare. But they're saying we'll get rid of pointless friendlies by adding more internationals to the calendar and more international. But basically, football now has become they get about 5 weeks. Football players get about 5 weeks to rest their legs, and people wonder why. Yes, they get paid a lot. The reason why they get paid a lot is to compensate them for their very short careers because the injuries and the fatigue their bodies are under. Most players, the retirement age is getting younger. The players aren't playing as long as they could. They're playing too many games in a short time frame, and so yeah, it is their right to go. We want to be properly compensated for a very short term career where there are health impacts through constant injuries and wear and tear on the body. So there is that. Right, I've been going now for nearly 3.5 hours. I'm going to call it night. Thank you very much for all your questions. Really appreciate it. I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. I think I'm going to have to discuss the Derby County administration tomorrow. I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to do it tomorrow now. I was going to do it tonight, but I need to get some sleep. So I'm going to discuss the Derby County administration, I think, tomorrow. And I'll do it slightly differently because I think they are facing liquidation if they can't find a buyer. They could be thrown out of the Football League. It could be another bury, which could then affect because they were currently 12th, and maybe there's only I think 6 games in the season or something. But I do think that could ultimately affect the FA Cup, the League Cup, the league finishing positions, because those points that have been gained by Derby County or lost and all that will affect the clubs that have played them. So it's in the EFL's best interest to keep Derby County going this season. If they go out of business, I think keep them going this season, and if they go out of business, then next season, then that's something to work out with promotions and relegations and league positions and prize money. But I think it's in the EFL's best interest to keep the club going. The EFL's under the spotlight because the Bury situation. So that's something I think we're going to have to keep our eyes on. But it is confirmed they've been deducted 12 points. I'm going to word the video different. I think they're facing liquidation. Now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon. Oh.